We're working. Heidi, check your mic. Okay. Everybody good? I checked mics earlier. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, 6:59. Just going by the.
All right, roll call PC members.
Al Keaton,
Yes, sir. Here.
Mike Jacobson,
Yes.
Heidi Bellmuth,
Yes.
Carl Roble,
Yes.
Keith DeYoung, here. Linda Slopsma,
Here.
Denise Pelton. Did
Here.
I say that right?
Kelton.
Pelton.
All right, next is set and adjust the meeting agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments to the agenda tonight? I don't see any hands raised. So I think we're good with that. No changes. Declaration of conflict of interest pertinent to our agenda items today. Does anybody have any conflict of interest that they'd like to submit for discussion? I see none. Okay, next we have public comment. So comments shall be directed to the PC with questions to the chair. We ask that you speak from the lectern or use the raised hand on Zoom, state your name and address. You may adjust the PC on matters that are relevant to the Planning Commission and zoning issues. You may only speak once on the same matter, excluding the time to answer questions, and time is limited to 3 minutes. Does anybody in the hall have a public comment?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Vicky Beam. I live at 6847 Baggs Road. There have been some issues going on in this township for quite some time now, and one of the topics tonight you're discussing is very relevant to a particular lawsuit that is going on in this township. I ask that all of you please take your time to prepare for your position as a PC member. We have a local ordinance that supersedes the state regarding land division, which you are going to discuss tonight, and that's why I'm here to make sure that everybody is paying very close attention to this. We have a land division ordinance that perfectly states a maximum of 4 to 1. And there have been some, I don't know, if confusing conversations regarding if 10-acre is an exception to this, and you'll hear very clearly, I hope tonight, that that is not the case. So as mentioned, I think that if you each take your time to prepare, do your homework, and being in the position that you're in, maybe some of the things that are going on in the township won't be happening in the future, which I really hope. I thank you all for your service. Greatly appreciate you taking your time and doing your homework in preparation. Thank you.
Hey, anybody else have a public comment in the town hall? Okay, and we'll turn to Zoom. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to make a comment?
Nobody's on Zoom.
Just me and him are on Zoom.
Okay,
Nope. I just had one join.
okay, so we have one new person on Zoom. Do you want to make a public comment? Zoom participant. You need to raise your hand on the system. Nothing? Okay, we will proceed. The next thing we have is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting that we had on August the 7th. That's on page 3. Does anybody have any comments or concerns with the content of the meeting minutes?
Was Supervisor Bob in the audience?
He was at the very beginning of the meeting. I believe he was helping with the Zoom setup, is what I recall.
That's why he's listed here.
Yeah, although I find that interesting because usually we don't note people in the audience, but yeah, I mean,
It's the only thing that caught
he
my eye.
didn't participate in the meeting. He was just, I think he
I didn't even notice it.
was
personally.
making sure that everything was okay. Okay, anybody have any concerns? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes where they are.
I
Okay.
second.
All right, motion by Jacobson, second by Al Keaton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Approved. All right, this month we did have a fair amount of correspondence. So those are all in your packet. Does anybody have any questions about any of those items of the correspondence? Okay, no specific comments regarding the correspondence. Moving on to reports, presentations, announcements, and comments. First, we have Deb with your zoning administrator report. If you'd like to come forward and hit the high points.
Well, if you review hi, everybody. If you review the report, I don't know if you have any questions about the report itself. Couple things that aren't in the report that have happened since I created the report is, Mike Jacobson, Al Seaton, myself, Randy met with Mike Sherman, a couple weeks ago. I summarized the minutes. We are meeting again next week. So we really don't have anything coming to the planning commission in the near future. Everything we identified, one being the official zoning district that property is located in, and two, what he's wanting to do is not currently something that's allowed in the ordinance. So, and we're going to learn about GAMS next week from Doug Mansfield. So, or how it may or may not apply to this particular property. The other thing is I met with Rob Lavina and Dusty from Doug Mansfield and Associates about phase 3 of the geodesic domes earlier today. Dusty brought me documentation. I've asked for a little bit more information. I haven't gotten a check yet. Rob Avina's dropping that off to me tomorrow. I'm anticipating possibly having a site plan review, kind of the amended version. I know that the only members of this board that I saw on the original approval of the Silver Birch Resort was Mike Jacobson. Everyone else, it's kind of going to be new information. And I thought it was good that he comes in and kind of lays out what he's doing on that property on Moore Road.
So
So
this is, yeah, this is the glamping site on
the
Moore Road.
glamping site, yes, with the geodesic domes and cabins. Yes. So
Everybody aware of where we're talking about
Yeah,
here?
is it
No.
not through the swamp right to the right where that move? where
yeah, it's
that's-
just past the golf course.
He's
What
right
road?
Target
There's
Tree.
Moore Road,
Yeah.
So Target
Yeah, if you
Tree.
go down Moore Road, I think it's 4575 Moore
That
Road.
goes to the dirt. That's
Just
that,
that.
that's that house. It's
The
right
big
there.
moose out
Okay.
front. That's the
Okay.
sign.
Just
So-
start coming up towards-
Just letting you know that there's something coming.
Was 4575?
4575. Yeah.
It might be. I don't know.
okay, so
Okay.
that's lots of talking all at the same time. So in summary, on Moore Road, just south of the golf course on the
side
right-hand
of the
side,
road.
which would be the west side of the road.
Mhm.
And it's called Silver Birch
Resort
Resort. Okay,
And the address was?
4575. We don't have anything definitive yet. I'm just giving you a heads up. I just met with them today, 9/11. I don't have enough time to review it all and get it on your October agenda, even though they would love to be on your October 3rd agenda. But it's in the beginning stages. They're looking at doing a phase 3 out there.
so,
Okay,
yeah, we do, just for everybody's awareness, we have a little shorter cycle on our next meeting because we delayed this meeting because of the Labor Day holiday. And so therefore, yeah, we've only got about 3 weeks between meetings, and the way the month falls, it's early
Yep.
in the
So
month.
if nobody has any questions about my zoning report, I mean, obviously short-term rentals are an issue. And we can talk about that when I get to the MTA class Heidi and I went to a couple weeks ago in Cadillac. So,
Okay, that might
Okay.
be good context.
all right, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Deb. For the chair's report, you will notice that, because of my pending position as the Whitewater Township Supervisor, I did turn in a resignation. So I'm staying for 60 days, as is the expectation per our bylaws. And so just wanted you to know I'm here for this meeting and the next meeting. And then I believe it's like on the 23rd of October that I will peel off here. So reviewing the bylaws, we have Mike as the vice chair. That per the bylaws, the normal process is for you to assume the position of chair. And then Keith as the secretary. And certainly he's also absorbing some additional duties today, taking the notes because of Lois McLean's resignation. So one comment I want to make about Lois's resignation. I attended the board meeting yesterday. There was an extremely lengthy discussion about options of what to do about Lois's resignation. And Heidi, you help me out if I don't have this exactly correct. I believe the final decision was until a new recording secretary is hired in some form, the different commissions have to take care of their own
Absorb
note
it
taking.
just like the Zoom.
Yeah, so
I fought you guys. I tried for hours.
Heidi tried,
Every which way I could present it.
she
you
did,
guys.
and unfortunately, so I believe unless there's a change at the next board meeting, that this will be left up to the new board that takes office in November.
And
and
that's
so-
probably the reason I had such a hard time. It's
So-
because they don't want to. We don't have enough time to do a policy and and all that. And about note taking between whose responsibility is and whose it isn't, which I was gonna discuss in my report, but I'll just give it now.
I don't want to get too
That's
off
it.
track on this.
I wasn't gonna get off track,
we'll
but
let
right
you
now we
come
don't
back
know
to
whose it is.
So here's the deal. I would just give you, speaking as presumably your new supervisor. If you run into somebody that might be interested in this position, I think it's a valuable position to the township. And I have done some checking with other townships, and most other townships have recording secretaries for at least a portion of some of their various meetings that they regularly hold. So certainly one of the hardest things to overcome is finding somebody that's willing to attend evening meetings and is available 12 months a year. So if you happen to know of somebody, please send them in my direction and or Wendy Hoaxama's direction, since she'll be the new clerk. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me regarding these two topics? Yeah, Denise?
With the appointments or continuing reappointments of the board, of the commission, besides myself, is anyone's term ending this year? Linda's leaving.
I believe yours does end in
Yeah.
December as well.
It's supposed to be maybe one other person, a third, because they do it, they rotate through 3 years term, so it should be like a third, so.
Right, so per the list that I have, it is Mike and yourself, and I think that's what Heidi handed me
me.
as well.
And I'm also off.
And yeah, the board representative goes with the board term, so that's a 4-year thing if they appoint at the beginning. And then, of course, my position. And so I think I located one person that is willing to apply. So far, I've asked others and I've gotten no's. So, certainly you guys all have a circle of people that you know. So don't be shy about letting people know that there's a need upcoming. And those of you that are expiring, you need to turn your paperwork in soon, if you would like to remain.
so we have to fill out another application.
Yeah, and I think that's posted on the website, isn't it, on the main page? Is that right?
Yes,
It
The
is,
application.
okay.
No.
Yeah.
but you don't have to do it, you have to resign. If you're gonna resign, it's a 60-day, but you can put in an application anytime you want.
That's true. So anyway, questions on that? Okay, any questions on what's happening with me peeling off in November? Okay, so I'm happy to help people putting together packets. Unfortunately, we don't have a Lois to help.
I'll help
Combine
till I'm
them.
done. I'll do as much as I
Yeah.
can for you guys, so.
Yeah.
Is there a plan? Is there someone in the window, in the wings for your position here on this committee?
You have to elect it.
They have
chair's
to
elected by
apply for
us.
the PC. Are you asking about, will you have to continue till next April? Is that what you're trying to ask?
How long are you gonna do this?
I read the bylaws. I invite you all to read the bylaws. I read the bylaws and it didn't really address any additional
Well,
kind of
first,
adjustments. If it clearly addressed if the chair vacated their position, what would happen? It didn't really talk about any ifs, ands, or
Basically,
whats.
this team puts the person in the chair, so as people come back to the table, then you'll make a decision.
But
You won't need,
do we have to wait till January for the election? Isn't that?
I was thinking.
no, you
Excuse
can
me,
do it
yeah,
in
Special
no-
election.
November. Why would you have a
If-
special
I
election?
think in the bylaw, it says each January. We should.
No, we
I
changed.
think if there's something vacated and then there became a necessity, like if Mike was unable to do it, I think you could call for a special election.
You would
You're
have to.
not a board. Okay,
No,
you wanna know how
I
it
know
works?
I'm not on the board, Heidi.
Well, yeah, but
Okay,
it doesn't work
I
that
mean-
way.
Well, she's not talking about,
Chill.
he's talking about
I
the special
understand.
election. It's just, if somebody doesn't want to do it, we have to put somebody in
I-
place. So we go.
I
so call it
understand that,
special or
but
whatever you want to call it.
that's not the question on the table. The question on the table was how long does he have to do this? Now think of your succession. She's resigning in October, okay? If somebody has an application in, you could get maybe an appointment, but you're probably not gonna, because the board don't want to do anything at all. So you're probably not gonna get an appointment, so you're gonna have to wait until you might be short. I don't leave till, my last meeting's November, okay? Denise's last meeting is December. Linda's last meeting is October. So the people are gonna rotate the change. Michael, if everybody plays their cards right, you might have to do it till through December. But I don't know, I look at this because you should have 3 new replacements and then you guys can elect officers. The bylaws, we've moved our bylaws to April. We change office in April. But because you no longer have a chair, we'll have to appoint someone as chair. Now, you could do that tonight, but she's not leaving till October. So,
I was just curious what the plan is going forward.
but everyone at this table
I
makes
think
the
bylaw
decision.
says it till the term is up. So it would be until April.
So Mike, if you want to think that over a bit more and, maybe give me a call, we can talk about it. Like if we need to get a question answered, we
But
can
his term
can-
is.
seek advice if you would like to seek additional advice. I don't have a lot of answers on this. I just read the bylaws and that's the
Okay.
way I read it as well.
But hold on though, he's up in December.
I
So
understand. that.
he has to be reappointed by, you'll be the supervisor, so
Mhm.
you would reappoint him. But at that time, you could reelect a new chair because we don't have one. And you're not coming in, once your term's up, you're no longer the vice chair.
I think
Just like
that's a
I'm no
little gray.
longer a board member.
I believe that's a little gray. So you know what?
So
I mean,
if
Mike
somebody
and I
wants
can
to
work
call-
on it.
I'd call the attorney and ask him if you had to, just say, are we following this right? But I think the
Okay,
rules
that's
of
fine.
this are in one of these books here.
Okay, so
And
maybe
also
Heidi
the-
will help look for the rules as well, but if
But
you
it
have
makes
further thoughts, I
sense.
want you to call me, please.
Because Michael, you would have to reapply. Your position follows your appointment. So your appointment, we have no more chair or secretary after December 31st unless you're reappointed.
Vice chair. you
Right,
mean,
we have
yes.
we have no vice chair, we don't have a chair. So you want to have a vice chair, you want to have a chair, you want to have a board rep? Because they're
Okay.
the board is gonna have to adopt a board rep.
Yes, okay, I think, any other questions on this topic? All right, why don't we move on? Heidi, your township board report.
Okay, so what happened was, the recording secretary quit, resigned, but only from the plan commission. But as an employee, you can't pick and choose what you do. So we had to vote her to resign from her other duties as well, because you can't pick and choose as a township employee. Recording secretary is an employee. So, there's some concern, I'm still reading, but the clerk supposedly is responsible for the minutes. She's saying no, that we're responsible for our own minutes. Well, if you read the bylaws, it says recording secretary can help the secretary take the minutes. But the problem is if you go into the clerk's book and look at her statutory duties, it basically says township meetings. So it's a gray area for everything. So what ended up happening was, they came up with a couple solutions, but you can't ask another employee to do something else that's not in their duties, so some policy has to be redone. And, if anybody else can find out where anything in this building is about a recording secretary, let me know.
All right, any other items, Heidi, for the group?
Nope, we didn't do much else of anything else.
Okay. All right, Carl, ZBA report.
We haven't had a meeting
Okay,
since last time.
all right, so no items. Okay, we're gonna move on to unfinished business. The next thing we have is discussion of various items relative to the zoning ordinance update. So first of all, Randy, we have a memo from you. I had that listed as the first item to discuss. And this is on our zoning ordinance clarification.
Page 25.
Yep, perfect. Page 25.
Okay, so based on our last meeting, we had a number of comments and discussion about edits to primarily table 4-1, which is really a key part of the zoning ordinance. There were a number of things that were not clear or needed to be addressed. So anyway, that's been done, and a copy of that table, I believe, was in the packet, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Did I stick
So
that?
27.
Thank you.
Here's
Oh.
what,
27.
That's the comments.
That's the comments. I don't think, somehow I think I'm missing a copy of the table here.
Yeah. That's what,
4-1 is on 27.
it's not the picture of it,
Okay. Oh, okay.
4-1. You know.
You want to make a quick copy of that, Randy, for us?
I can.
I think it might be worth it. I know it's been a big deal.
Page
for us to do
26, 27.
that. He was thinking he had it in here, but I think
26 and 27, I think. Is that,
it's that's the summary pages.
Yeah.
is that the use of work for dwelling versus dwelling?
Yeah, but then he was talking about,
something
you
different.
had the actual table, right?
Yes,
Are you thinking like all the setbacks and all that jazz?
right, the actual
there-
table.
Okay,
Okay, let me go back and grid that here.
so Randy's gonna print that for us for a minute. I think that's probably important.
You want to email it to me? I'll go print it. You can.
Oh,
I have, I think this is what you're looking for here.
Yes, is that,
It's,
well, but is that last version though?
this is in, I don't know because I got it out of the draft from, and it may be.
Well, what's
the
the-
packet? It was with the packet this month.
Yeah, so what's the date on the front of it? I think this is the latest one, but flip it over and look at the date on the very front of the whole document. Very beginning, it's usually
Oh.
red.
It says, 8/27.
Yeah, that would be it, right?
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't see that. It's just these 2 pages, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So all the changes that we made were reflected in table 4-1, with the exception of the issue on dwelling, the word plural dwelling, and that occurred in a couple places, so. Maybe while the copies are being made, we could, you want to jump to the zoning map then, or?
Sure, yeah, we can do that.
I'm excited.
I can read the road names fine.
Yeah, so Al and I had another meeting with Josh at the county. As you remember from the previous meeting, there were a number of changes to be made. We added road names, we added dimensions in many cases because of the R1 district, for example, along Elk Lake and Skegamog Lake is an actual dimension of 1,000 feet. So we put that in there so you could tell exactly what that's supposed to be. There were a number of other kind of cosmetic issues. We played around with the colors a little bit in order to make them more distinctive and just sort of rearrange the fonts and the print. But it's been about a good half hour with Josh making these changes. He's provided us with this map, which now is our best understanding of what the zoning is for the township. So, I don't know, Al, do you have anything to add to that?
It's got note that we followed the streams with the
Yeah.
with the yellow.
Yeah, that was an issue because the stream corridors were different, I guess, as they tend to move, excuse me, a little bit. So we had to rectify what was the county had versus what we had in our map, but this is as accurate as we know how to make it.
So I have one question. I find this interesting. So, I know that like where I live was subdivision platted forever, a long, long time ago here. Like 40s or 50s, a long time ago. And, I see that this is R1 as well around Truax Lake, which is filling in a lot more lately, like a lot of people are building in there lately. It's interesting to me that Glendenning here, some larger lots, so that's A1. Right?
Yep.
And also there's this other neighborhood over here. And also these small lots along, back in road there. I'm a little surprised that I don't see those colored yellow because. I mean, I guess they must be 1 acre lots if they're A1, correct?
If they were created after the zoning ordinance was in place.
I think those are actually bigger lots.
Glendenning, I think you're right.
They're supposed to be 5 acre, I think, off of there maybe. Is that in the woods?
No, it didn't.
No. Okay.
No,
make
these
the
aren't,
budget.
these aren't 5 acre. But they are maybe a little bit bigger, but a lot of these lots and tracts are pretty big. But anyway, well, it's just interesting to me, especially like these, you can kind of see it like proportionally, these are quite small. But you're right, maybe they were split off before the zoning ordinance.
Well, they only had to be an acre, around 40,000 square feet in size and conform with.
I'm just.
With the 200 feet being A1.
Right.
Egg's gotta be 200 feet wide. And
Yeah.
a minimum 40,000.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is that worth investigating or not? I know it was never yellow on the other map. It's just kind of interesting to me after I've been out and about. It's also interesting to me that this Maple Meadows that's in the lower portion here of this is the original subdivision and this is some of the new stuff. They definitely have bigger lots down there. They still are set up as R1. And I know that was a little unusual. It was the same developer, but quite a period of time between the developments. like a long period of time. So,
In that lower part down there, I think too, there's more like, wetlands. I wonder if he didn't make them larger to compensate for some of that.
And the lots on the south
it
end of it.
Yes.
is down,
Yes.
it is
Yeah.
down low.
Yeah.
There's
You
so
go
much
down
stuff.
and down and down to get into there,
You know, so I wonder if he didn't compensate by,
maybe,
uh,
possibly. I know there's a creek that runs through there.
Are you, which area of the map are you talking about?
This stuff, so
Oh,
this was the
Maple,
original
yes.
neighborhood that came off of Hook Road.
Mhm.
But then, when they put these in here, they connected it up with this piece right here, this little road.
Yeah.
Actually connects the two neighborhoods.
and one, that was the choice thinking, well, if I make my lots bigger, they would, sometimes the bigger lots sell, you can sell them for more money, but they also
Mhm.
sell better because you can have some space between your houses, so.
Mhm.
Because you're right, down, when you go over that hill, it seems like the lots just all are larger.
It's a good example of how a winding road can make a place feel bigger. For sure, because they're not straight roads at all.
And I think in a lot of cases, people have owned two lots too, don't they, in that subdivisions,
Yeah, that might be it too.
you know?
Yeah.
No idea.
Written a lot of permits out there. I don't think they're double lots.
No.
They're just bigger.
Just
But they've got a lot of steepness to them. A lot of.
Yeah, there's a lot of contour.
Most of them are going in as walkouts.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that we are not showing where the Boardman River is?
I
We're
wondered
showing where all
that
these creeks
myself.
are, But we're not showing where the Boardman River is.
I'm not that familiar with
The,
where
the
it,
south,
where's
south, the north branch runs right through here, it runs right through these pieces of property.
Right,
It crosses the road about in there, it runs through these pieces
Right.
of property.
that's why there's so much of it in the master plan, and why isn't it on the map?
yeah. Now, oh, this says North Branch Road, I'm not familiar
Well,
with this
this,
road.
do you know where the old culvert was and they just put the new bridge in on Broomhead? By the power line, where the power line runs through, it's right down, the bridge has got right about there.
The brown.
It was a culvert we used. Last year ago, we put a bridge in there.
Yeah.
So where's Ranch Road off the road, or that road that takes up? Ranch Road? Where is it?
Probably goes-
You got it.
Where is it down
It's
here?
down, see, this is supply.
Okay,
So
so
Ranch
it's
Road
down
off over
here,
here.
okay, that's where I know where the.
missing
The Boardman River crosses about here, and then it crosses again about here. What's the flag? So, we, I think the south branch is in our township. It just seems, I mean, we've got all these other smaller creeks.
Yeah.
Noted, shown, but the
Right.
biggest river we have running through our township, we don't have. I wonder if there's a reason for that.
Well, Michael, it's in the master plan and stuff, so why didn't it get on the
Well,
map?
Well, let me explain though. I mean, the reason you have the creeks on there is because for whatever reason, when the zoning was done, they created that residential area 300 feet from the creeks flowing northward. And there wasn't any similar thing for the Boardman. But I think that's a point though to be considered in that we do have special setbacks applying to areas around the Boardman.
On the border, right, on the river.
So that would be perhaps something to put on there so that if Deb had a zoning permit application,
You know, the
you
river
could
was
see
so
whether
far
or not it
away.
is near the Boardman or not.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because there's all that. Really
So can we go
specific
back and
stuff.
get it
Yeah.
added?
Yeah.
No problem? Okay, cool.
No, no.
So
As long as there's a good reason to put it on there.
So does it need to be colored a certain way because of all those zoning restrictions that are on it?
It'd be
In-
colored the same
inside
as
the
the other
ordinance.
creek, right?
Well, I would just ask the
It
company to
could-
put
it
the,
shouldn't be a creek, it should be a river.
well,
No,
there's,
but does
I mean,
it
there's,
have the 300-foot thing. the
right,
first
but
one?
there's no such requirement for the Boardman
Oh,
River
there
except for, I mean, it's not zoned any different. It's all zoned RC. The
Right.
difference is there's different setbacks required
From the river,
if you're near the Boardman.
right,
So
There's a vegetative zone up against the riverbank.
I remember
There's
that.
all kinds
Yeah.
of different regulations for that.
So even though it's not a different zoning district, it probably would be helpful to have it on the zoning map.
The river or?
At least mark the
how about
river.
some
At least
banding on
mark
it?
the river.
Do you think we should be putting banding on that?
No,
Okay.
no banding, just a
Yeah.
blue line to show generally where the
general-
river is, so.
Right.
I mean, so much of that land is state land in the green, but
Right, it's
But-
just these few pieces that are private. Maybe that one.
I didn't realize it was that.
You know, maybe it would be a good idea to, mark the state land a different color.
Yeah, that's what I was, because to me.
Yeah, it's just all a big blob.
Well, it's rec.
But
it's all zoned RC.
Yeah, the color is for the zoning.
Yeah.
And I know the state land isn't in private use to be zoned yet, but someday when it sells to a private individual, it will still be zoned. That same.
Rec. It'll be in rec
Yeah.
one.
Why couldn't we do like a darker green
or
was R1 state land?
or a
Not a bad
dash.
idea.
Well, we'd have to create that as a new zoning district then, if you're
Yeah,
gonna show it on a
we
zoning
don't have a
map. but,
zoning
I mean,
district.
I think I would like to see that in the future. I mean, we don't have to do it right now, but
Could you do a
That's-
dashed line? Like, you know, you're gonna have the roads on there marked, you can have the state land marked with some type of dash line, you don't have to change the color.
you never see it.
That's, well,
It'd be nice if it was a little darker green, but couldn't you just put a darker green on there and call it state land? Like a overlay or something, or no?
Well, the color code is coded to the zoning district.
Right.
Yeah, and I get that.
District
Is,
So I
Right.
kind of like the idea of some kind of slash through the.
Oh, there we go.
You could put, like a gray colored slash or whatever color through the state, like a diagonal line or something. Like that maybe, and then up in your,
right, underneath it, you could have state
Yeah.
land with the
Just
line.
state-
That's a good idea.
but,
Was it showed differently on the previous map, Deb? Was the state land shown?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It wasn't
No.
shown.
So, and those categories are what are in your zoning ordinance.
Right.
So if you add another zoning district to that zoning map, you're gonna have to add it to your zoning
yeah,
ordinance.
so I kind of think we're stuck with what we got here.
But we can add the Boardman River,
Yeah.
both the main
yeah.
and the tributary to it to help Deb. Because
Can you
otherwise,
make sure that that's
how would-
heavy too, so you can actually see it, because I think it's kind of hard.
that would
to
be
just-
likely more thicker than the ones.
Yeah, it should be a
It
little
should be
thicker line.
thicker than
Yeah.
these cricks.
Correct.
Okay. So is that the only change that anybody's noted on the needs of the map? Denise? question?
I would like the lakes labeled if, I mean, you have them there, but you don't have a name on them, or when you're looking at, I was looking at DNR regs today because for another project, but they list the names of lakes and I don't even know where they are.
Oh,
You know,
Spider Lake, that's probably, what lake is
No,
that
the-
down
the
there, Michael? Is
smaller
that
ones,
Spider down there?
No,
What
no,
lake is that?
bottom left is inland lake,
Inland? Okay.
right,
Yeah.
right there.
Island Lake.
That's
Yeah, it's Island Lake. But see all the little waterways you have to the right?
All of this stuff?
Yeah,
yeah, you have a pretty large one on the lower left corner. But yeah,
that's Inland Lake. Then you have,
Island Lake.
Island Lake.
This is Island Lake and then.
Yeah.
The other ones are Sands Lake, but some
Over
of those,
here. these are the
one,
same
wonder if
lakes.
they're named. Some of those may not be
They
named.
don't have names. They're
Well,
like
they're
1,
numbers.
2, and 3.
Yeah, no,
Well, the one is Titus Lake, but I think that
Right.
got changed.
yeah.
I don't think that's needed. So Denise, are you just asking for Elk Lake to be labeled?
and
Truax
maybe
Lake?
Island and Truax and,
Yeah.
yeah, Skigmog, that. But they are named on the DNR maps. There's Bissell Pond is on there. I'm looking at Google Maps, but they have names for most of these. Some of, not all of the little kind of puddles, but I don't mean to offend anybody if I call their lake a puddle, but smaller lake. But yeah, definitely Island and Truax.
That's Island and Dollar Lake is the next one over.
Yeah, dollar. I can't, I'm like, I should know.
I know,
I can't think of that.
That's what I mean. We don't have labels on this, on the lakes, and then we have to, and we can't remember what they are.
So I guess for clarity, so that Randy knows what to do. So what I heard people say is label Skigamon Lake, Elk Lake, Truax Lake. Are we labeling Bissell Pond over here? Around the
It'd
corner?
be too small to almost read it unless you had a very large map.
Good.
I mean, you get.
You got Twin Lakes there above Dollar Lake.
I know, I think some of these, yeah.
And Guernsey Lake is on the DNR map listing. 'Cause they have the Guernsey Lake Campground.
Yeah, but that's in.
That's out of our area, Sand Lakes.
So let's just agree on this, so we can move along, so Skigamon,
Okay.
Elk, Truax, Island Lake. Do we need to label Dollar Lake or not?
I think it'd be nice. I mean, I didn't know what it was until I looked it up.
Is it DOLLAR or OR?
What about Tobacco Pond? Should we
It's
add-
AR,
Yeah, like
Dollar, like Dollar General.
I don't know, it's a small sliver up there to fit it in there, Mike. They're
Yeah.
talking about.
I don't know how to pronounce it either.
Topical.
I don't know, just say it really fast and
Uh,
slow. Is
There you go.
Cool.
that enough info for you, Randy? Okay, so we're gonna do that, and we're adding the south branch of the Boardman Lake, and you said possibly some tributaries, right? You'll figure that out. Okay. All right, so this coming back next month again?
Well, I guess we have a larger discussion, sending the whole zoning ordinance to the
Oh, yeah.
attorney.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that the attorney is going to have much to say about those kind of issues as he would
Okay,
the disclaimers that we
Right.
have in there.
the bottom
um,
stuff on the
As
bottom.
well as just the general form of how the map is set up.
Okay,
So.
yep, okay. All right. So I'll kind of just leave that open for now. Do you want to switch back to this now that we're done with the map?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so back to this. This is really hard to read in the grayscale.
Oh, there's a copy.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I think the pages are out of order there too. So. So I guess,
Oh, did I get it wrong?
Stapled together backwards, that's a.
yeah, that's all.
oh, let's see what you mean. Yeah, got it. Just tear them apart. Fix it.
So I think I got all the change, I mean, when I went through it myself again and took all the comments. Tried to check and double check this. There's still time, of course, before this is finalized, but I don't want to minimize it either.
So your one change that you said, your second one down on your summary says table 4.1, table heading. Should say square feet or acres since both units are
Yes.
used, and I'm looking for where this is, minimum lot width, minimum lot area. Okay, there, I see where you added that, so it's a second column of information. And that affects things like MHP at the bottom of page 4 or 5, because that's an acreage. And then there were other acreages, RC1 has the 5 acres. Okay. Any other ones that you wanted to call to our attention on this list?
No, I don't think so. I tried to list them all as clearly as possible. what the comment was. I mean, actually went back and listened to the meeting, so I try to catch all the comments that were made. Not to say something can't slip through, but
So you had the third one down on 4.7 for enclosures for animals.
yes, we wanted to refer to
Okay,
the
that's
section, see section 507. In the prior version, we had numbers in there and that was potentially a conflict with
Right.
within 507.
okay. So it tells you to go read section 507 for the text
Right.
on that. Okay,
That's another example of the town of the zoning ordinance having similar requirements in two places. And that's-
Okay.
That's never a good idea.
right. And we kind of glossed over the issue of dwelling versus dwellings, plural.
Yep.
And so you said you rewrote section 4.04
It took out dwellings
to
because,
say for R1 residential, the intent is specifically a single family dwelling. And the structures and uses typically associated with residential area. Okay,
I'm just gonna rewrite the 4.40 to be. I mean, I think I have this, I go,
hey Denise, if you have something, kind of grab that microphone so we can all hear you.
On page 26, I was just asked, on page 26, I just asked in the first use of work dwellings versus dwellings that you mentioned on the resolution, it's above 4.04 in bold, it was rewrite the 4.40 to read. I was just wondering if 4.40 was a typo. That's all.
to change the dwelling.
Yeah, but the number,
Well, the numbers should have been 4.404.
Yeah. that's,
Oh, okay, gotcha. It's just a little typo on,
Yeah.
on the last column of the
Mhm.
first
Yeah.
item. Those are just out of order.
but we're really going over the chart.
Catch.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
so hopefully this addresses people trying to put second homes on their residential parcels. I think there's been a little bit of a tendency of that lately, of people trying to do that. Okay, are we still checking something or
Yes.
are we good to move on?
I think I missed one. It should say single family dwelling under 4.401.
Yeah, it's. Oh,
I got one X, I missed one S.
Okay, so you found another stray S?
Yep.
Okay,
where did you see that?
Actually, in the book itself.
Not in I'm looking in the agenda.
No, it's not in it.
okay. Moving on to page 27 here, the first thing was just lining up your headings, so they continued on. So you fixed that. That footnote number 5 on the bottom of page 4.6. You remove the words, whichever's less, and just left it the same way it was before. And then the last note, blank boxes under special situations, you added the term shown above in the special situations box to clarify the intent of special situations only notes the ones that are different.
Right.
So you added the text there, except for specific requirements stated, the regulations of the underlying zone shown above shall remain unchanged.
So if it's blank, it's
It's that's
explicit.
clear, there's no change. And that's the things like, that's where this Boardman River stuff is in there, 100 feet from the ordinary high water mark. Okay. So any further discussion on any of that? So that takes care of Randy's memo. And we've gone through the zoning map. I believe that brings us to page 28, the COPUD record trace. This is the thing that Keith and Heidi were working on.
That Heidi worked.
Heidi's working on it.
Page 28
I also gave you guys a
and
worksheet.
29.
I gave you guys a worksheet. Anybody fill it out or use it or look at it or?
So let's stay on topic of the COPUD. So if you can
Well,
share
the
with us what you
worksheet-
learned.
Okay, well, the worksheet talks about the COPUD, Linda. So apparently I wasted my time. Not a problem. I'll continue on. So my advice on this COPUD is you really need a subcommittee. And I'm probably gonna get pushback from it and nobody's gonna like that idea. But there's a lot of information that's missing from places. Minutes need to be read, things need to be files need to be found. Because there's all kinds of different things that happened. Now, if you look at the COPUD definition. And you look at what's considered for a zoning request and a variance, all this has something to do with the COPUD. So, from what I can tell, going through all the files of the different properties, each one of these properties is unique. The problem is there's a bunch of hearsay and stories out there. Everybody has a different story depending on who you ask of what really happened with this COPUD. So I started looking, and if you look at all the properties and you just go, okay, what was the problem? It looks like Renee's quilt shop might have needed a variance for some gutters. When you get to Heinz Machinery, which I'm sorry, I should have corrected the minutes, I spelled it wrong. It's Heinz Machinery. It looks like they needed a higher building than they could really go up. So they had to drop a peak. Yet the building goes all the way to the top of the fake peak on the front of the building. Then you get into different displays of how many units you can have outside, which is gonna be a problem because it looks like certain people got one way and another company got another way. So when you start looking at each one of these and why they could have become a COPUD, when you start reading each file, there's all kinds of different things. Plus, there's court cases, there's cross references of land division. Each one has a different uniqueness of it. So my advice is to assemble a COPUD, maybe 2 people from here, 2 residents. You're gonna spend a lot of time in the zoning administrator's office looking at folders. And we have to figure out the file system because they cross-reference everything. So some have cross-references, some don't. Like I got to Ginnip sales and I've cross-referenced 3 different parcel numbers.
So if I remember correctly, I think we need to kind of go back to why did we decide we wanted to study the history of the COPUDs? I think part of this was something, Randy, that you discovered when you were doing the zoning ordinance, correct?
Yep.
And it was something about this whole, help me if I'm wrong on this, COPUD stands for commercial PUD, and this affected the area along M72 only.
It's
It goes
court,
all the way to the casino.
it's a corridor overlay planned unit development. district,
Okay, so it's not commercial,
not-
it's
not
corridor
commercial.
overlay. Thanks for clarifying.
If you need the definitions, it's in your zoning thing. If you just
Okay,
look at
so
definitions.
Randy, if you can continue on, there was something that I remember you were concerned about the wording. In the
Section
zoning.
6.02 in the new version says that a corridor overlay planned unit development zoning district includes all lands adjoining M72 from Cook Road west to the township line, 500 feet on either side. So it's, in my mind, it's creating this zoning district.
Yeah.
But it doesn't show on our map.
I just was
Right.
turning backwards looking and I don't see it on the map.
Mm-mm.
I see red, but I don't.
I mean, it's,
See commercial, but you don't see
So-
co-pod.
so then there's that section. That's, I don't know how you reconcile that with the fact that when you review a project and approve it, you rezone the property to COPUD. So it's supposed to be already zoned
Commercial.
for, supposed to be already zoned that. How can you zone it? But it already is.
Yeah.
Rezone it to what it already is.
So, I mean, I think it was just, I'm guessing some sloppy language when this was put in place in the first place, but I guess. So then, as you read through the entire chapter, what you see are all kinds of pretty good development standards about architectural review, landscaping, where off-street parking is, all that. But so when those projects were approved, there really should be some discussion and some information about how those things were reviewed. What did we do as far as landscaping? What did we do as far as architectural standards? How did those projects meet these requirements? So I'm confused about what was done, how it was done, and where the records are.
Randy, would that already be, there'd already be commercial out there, right along 72, would that be right?
Most of it is all the red.
So I think the
So what does a
examples,
co-pod, why is it differentiating when that shouldn't that just be commercial?
I think what they intended, I'm guessing, I wasn't here, is that that's the township's front door, that's the major commercial. We want to have nice architectural standards here. We want nice development along 72. The way to get there in some people's mind was to create the COPUD. And so that's what was done. So
Are we talking simply about variances being granted when these projects were brought up? And that's gotten out of hand? I don't understand.
it might have been viewed as a way of avoiding the normal standards.
Yeah, trying to get around it.
You know, with the
But some of them
Well-
went and some of them got declined. So it's, when you start looking at all these different properties, it gets really interesting. Then you go to look for the next part. And the folder.
Well, they're so unique though, when it comes to commercial, Ginnup's of course would be different from, another commercial thing down there, so there would be a need for some uniqueness to fit the need, so I can see it.
This would be, to me, from when you are granting variances and you get to be doing a lot of it, you need to change the ordinance. I don't know that we need something called a COPA. We need to look at the ordinance for the commercial district and maybe look at things, clarify it, and maybe it needs to be changed. Say, look, we're granting all these variances because of a need. Something's wrong with the ordinance.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
good point, Carl. Granting the ordinance, you granting there must be a need for it, or they wouldn't be applying for it.
Yeah, and that's really a responsibility of the CBA to bring that back to the planning commission and say, look, we're doing all this stuff. So the ordinance just isn't meeting the need.
So, but I guess part of the reason for wanting to have us dig into this was to find out what was reviewed, what was proposed, what conditions were applied, how did the planning commission take these standards and apply it to the projects that they approved?
Why?
because we don't know. We.
I mean, I sitting here saying, okay.
It's
we
for
have
a zoning
a lot of
request, Carl, there's.
Okay, so now-
questions there.
Is
Now,
somebody expressing a need or challenging? Hey, we had a lot of things to do. If this is needed to be done, fine, but you haven't told me yet why.
Carl, look at the map. It's on the map. Carl, see the
Yeah.
zoning map?
Yeah.
See
right.
COPUD? It's an overlay. It's a PUD.
Okay.
So you guys, I don't know if everybody can see it from their chair. But it looks like there's 4 properties. You guys help me, like, get up.
Get up, Renee's
Renee,
Quilting, the Acme Thrift Store, and Heinz Machinery,
Thanks. Yeah.
and
So
John
there's
Deere.
5 applications of this. And the point was, as Randy said, to try and investigate and see like maybe what elements or allowances were given. I think Heidi mentioned the height of the Heights machinery because of the need for, I believe, chain falls and stuff to pull. I don't even know what they do there. It's so quiet there. I'm not sure. But
They.
apparently
work
some
on
overhead
giant
trains.
Truck
stuff.
equipment,
Yeah,
Big trucks.
snow plows and.
okay, so
Okay,
so
so
I
here,
think the element of the question here was Randy thought the wording was strange because you have your zoning district and it said a COPUD was available, right? And you said some of the wording was a little strange because you assign it a COPUD and then you reassign it commercial. I don't know, something like this, right?
Yeah, they create the zoning district and then they say that they're gonna rezone to it. I guess I don't understand.
well, this request to the planning commission from Glenn and Renee Savage was for setbacks. And 20 foot between buildings.
So if it was a setback issue, why didn't they just ask for a variance?
Randy, would the fix to that?
They have to
be
change
make
the
that
amendment.
Commercial, because the ones you cited are ones that are built, so it seems like in order to build there, they've got a variance, and like Carl was saying. That's a commercial district. It's strange to me that they would need a special variance to build in the commercial district. Now, the height, they may have to go up, just like Linda was saying, because you work on tall equipment. But seems like the COPUD variances were unnecessary.
Well,
Like
this
to
was
ask
a
a question.
request for amendment to the zoning in the commercial
I'm sorry,
district.
Keith, you said that is the question. Is that what you just said?
No, I said, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
I'm quite following this, so. The town, the board, the planning commission adopted a COPUD. How many feet back from the road on 72?
500 feet
Out for how long?
from Cook Road to the township border. on the
Okay,
west.
which does not show on the map, right?
It didn't show on the current one. It
But
didn't
it's not showing on this one either, right?
show, no.
Okay.
The parcels that it was enacted.
Okay, but it is that whole corridor. Now, is that actually a zoning district?
That's the question. We didn't put it on that map because of the confusion. They rezoned parcels, but then also called the whole
And the
thing.
ones that they rezoned were already in commercial?
I believe so.
Yep.
So they rezoned it from commercial to PUD, commercial, or not a commercial,
Corridor.
Corridor overlay,
overlay.
corridor overlay PUD.
So here's a couple of points. So in the architectural review standards, it says, for example, pitched roofs, minimum 412 pitched roof. I don't think the Heights has pitched roofs.
No, they don't, because if you look at this is how they got around it, from what I know. If you look at the front of the building, there's a peak, but it's on the front part of the building. There's no peak to the roof. Because they do heavy equipment and they needed higher ceilings because they've got bigger lifts.
It's a steel structure, so they don't have it.
And they don't need a 412.
Right.
They don't need
Okay,
it.
but the ordinance asks for that. And it also
So they
says
made a big
natural
one.
wood siding, stone, brick, all these other materials in here. It says metal or plastic surface materials.
That's how you think they got around it by creating this new COPUD.
Well, there's 30, there's.
Well, in that corridor on
Two,
the
three,
new
four,
Dollar
five, six,
General, I
seven,
don't believe that's gonna have 412. I think that's probably gonna be.
Well, they didn't apply
Yeah.
for a COPUD, right?
Yeah, so, but it's
They
not
do.
necessary because
The
it's a steel
commercial
building.
standard.
Right.
So I'm wondering if there's some clues, if you look at the date of adoption of that amendment. It seems like there would be some, did you look at that,
I
Heidi?
didn't look at the
Like
adoption of
when
that.
they adopted the amendment, I would think that maybe there would be some comments as to why.
Once that's adopted, before the businesses were put in, they didn't know they was gonna need a variance.
Is there conflict putting a COPUD over top of a commercial? So that the
It's an
commercial,
overlay. So it is two zoning two zoning districts kind of working together, right?
is
But I-
overlay,
It's an overlay.
my
that
question,
means
is it a conflict?
And I would accept that, except that for the language says that it's, after it's approved, it's rezoned.
Yeah,
Yeah, see, that's the part that's confusing to me.
Oh, that makes sense.
And that's my hang up on this thing too. If it
that's
was
the
an
whole
overlay-
hang up. They want to rezone it because the issues to be considered for rezoning request are.
The
If it
answer
were
be
an
to take that
overlay-
out, that's the verbiage.
If it were just an overlay, it would impose
Right.
additional requirements on the underlying district. Because you could potentially have commercial somewhere else. This is, but it doesn't say that. It says it's rezoned.
Once,
And
once what?
you're actually, it sounds like the applicant is applying for that.
So
So it's
just because they say it's a COPUD now, doesn't mean you get it, you have to still apply for it?
that's
So
that's the
kind
way
of
I would-
what they're saying is this is where the COPUDs can go, but it's not a COPUD till you rezone it to a COPUD.
I think that's the intent, but that's not what it says, so.
Right.
It's interesting that if I remember correctly too, Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, these happened in kind of a fixed period of time. There was these five
On the 20,
occurred
right,
fairly close together.
all the way back to 2008. I started reading 2017. Got to, part of 2017 was questionable, so I went to the PC minutes for that. I found permits. But
But I'm asking, did these all occur like in a 5-year period, or did you have, I know Heights was the last one that was done. Most
I'm gonna say
recently.
between 2008 and 2014, 15.
A fairly short period of time.
No,
17 Gnips was putting on an addition.
yeah, Gennops was been there before.
Before-
Oh,
They-
but then
Yeah.
they made
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah, I guess
addition didn't
before,
start
yeah.
till 15, the addition didn't start till I think till 2015. Cause they were
Is that when they
having,
changed to the COPUD? Is that when they changed their?
it looks like
standing to
it,
the COPUD?
it looks like it, cause 2008 they started, they got denied, then, or 2000 they got denied, so 2000 they came back. And then they replied, the recipient applies for a zoning change in 2008. Recipient must petition.
Well, if
special
it's already,
meetings.
if it's already rezoned, why do they have to apply for it?
I don't know.
And how could they deny that if if
I don't know.
the board already approved it to be rezoned?
I
I'm just
guess
trying to
the
get this in my
the
head. 'cause it
concerning
makes
thing
sense.
too is they never applied the standards to these projects.
So if you didn't apply the standards to the projects, then nobody probably ever submitted a thing to make even go into the COPUD. So, did somebody just put that up there for that reason? They don't have to go to the ZBA, but they all went. It was interesting because there's case numbers but there's no cross references to the lot numbers, so that's as far as I got. On the addition. to
Why
the
do we
lot.
need the COPUD? Why couldn't it just be the commercial overlay? I mean, that's commercial. Why do we even need the COPUD?
That's a good question.
So,
That was my question.
so bringing this back,
Non-conformity.
It's for non-conforming, is that
It
why?
would create a non-conformity because some of those structures don't meet the setback requirements. Some of those
Yep.
those buildings exceed the existing restrictions of 35 feet, so they must be higher than that. So it would create those, it would turn those buildings into non-conformities, like Renee's quilt shop has got what, a 10-foot setback?
Yep,
She added gutters or something else, she needed to have 20.
on
for
a porch, she needed
property.
20. Hold on.
I think she also added, when that turned from a residential home into a business,
She added a porch.
she also expanded the building significantly.
Here's what she needed. As you know, the side setbacks for commercial is 15 feet. We would respectfully propose that the setback be reduced to 10 feet. This would allow for greater use of said property. 20 feet between buildings would still allow for emergency vehicles and fire equipment access between the structures. If it is not possible to change the side lot setbacks, we would ask that the setback be measured from the foundation of the building instead of the eave edge.
Okay, so let's talk about where we go from here. The reason this came up is, again, restating because Randy discovered this during his word for word comparison and pushing this all into one zoning ordinance copy instead of all the amendments. We're not allowed to make any material changes, so I think we have to leave the COPUD in there. I think this was more of a curiosity issue to try and understand what happened on these 5 properties. But if there's any talk of getting rid of the COPUD, that has to be a totally different discussion. That's a future issue.
There would be a rezoning request, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally
Well,
different. And
There's a
so,
bunch of questions for that.
so at this point, I don't know that there's any action to take on this. I mean, it's still an interesting question to ask.
Yep.
To understand more specifically, Heidi just read to you, it was a setback request on Renee's house of quilting, which is unusual since it was an existing building and it used to be part of a bigger parcel.
Setbacks are addressed specifically in the COPUD under 6.05.
Oh, what's it say?
Mine, it went from a private home to a commercial
Right,
Says-
activity, which changed the
It's on,
semantics of what the use
Says
was.
no permanent or temporary structure shall be constructed or placed within 25 feet of any side yard not facing a public right of way.
And the, some of the parcels are odd shaped, so it might have something to do with that. But if you look at Renee's, there's like a corner, angled corner, or something, if you look at the picture of it. But
that doesn't have nothing to do with the building.
I'm just curious, you know, if we can't change anything, maybe put it in the master plan as something to look at it. But this would have to go to the township board for any.
well, absolutely. And
But
I
yeah.
think continuing to do research to
Wait,
find
wait,
out
what did you
why
say?
some of the people
It
that were
doesn't, does
involved
it?
are still alive. Were you on the PC?
It doesn't go to the township board.
It's this planning commission that makes changes. here, so.
Yes. Okay, so I don't know that is there any further action that we want to take on this topic?
No, it's exactly the way it is in the ordinance now. It's just moved to here.
Okay, so we moved it into the new zoning ordinance as is, but it is something for
That's
potential
problematic.
follow-up in the future. I would say that Heights Machinery is a great example because I believe it's still under the same ownership as original. I mean, there's maybe something to be gained by somebody following up on that at some point. To understand, it sounds like Heidi already discovered some of it.
It'll also come to a point when somebody like Heights wants to do an amendment, wants to change what they're doing there. If they want to add on, if they want to change the use of that building,
So they would have to modify it.
then we'd have to modify it in some way, but we'd have to find out. I mean, then we'd be back into this as written.
Yeah, because there's like
Okay.
all kinds of.
So are
like
you
20
saying-
questions.
Randy, are you saying that like if somebody has just a regular commercial building versus this COPUD agreement, are you saying the rules for like adjustments or changes are different? So they would have to conform to the COPUD rules
Yes.
because they've zoned their property COPUD versus the
Yeah.
commercial rules?
Right, or they'd have to ask for a rezoning
No,
request.
I mean, it's already zoned COPUD. So if they wanted to change the use, the building, whatever, then we'd have to go to this chapter, which is now Article 6.
You'd
Definitely
have
have
to
to-
answer all
It would
these
come back to
questions.
the planning commission as a site plan review,
Yeah,
and then you would have that discussion about that specific individual
Okay.
entity at that time.
And
So,
there's about
yeah.
there's a bunch
And
of
I remember
questions
this
that you
whole
would ask
COPUD
yourself.
section was really large. Okay. Okay, so I'm not hearing any future action. Anybody want to take on this right now?
I know the family, I could talk to them. What is it that we want to
Other
know?
than just learning.
Okay.
I think the question in my mind was, can you tell me the history of why you chose to go for co-PUD zoning? And go through that process versus just using the
Wonder
commercial
if they even know
requirements?
that
I
there's
think
no-
that's the question, right?
Well, I would,
If I may.
Go ahead.
There is in zoning ordinances, there's usually a chapter that says rezoning ordinance. So when you want to take a ag piece of property, and you want to convert it to commercial, or you have a commercial piece of property that you want to convert and rezone to industrial, or you have residential that you want to flip to commercial. So there's usually a chapter in a zoning ordinance that references what the process is to rezone from ag to another activity. And we do not have that in this township. So this was probably the catch-all at the planning commission level when they came before you as a site plan review and said, hey, I need a little more height, or I need less side yard setbacks or whatever. I don't know why it didn't go to the ZBA, and this was a choice they made, and it only impacted just a few parcels. But if it came before me at this point in time and it wasn't in this particular area, I would probably send it to the ZBA for review. But it would definitely be something that has to be reviewed. And it's gonna come to the planning commission. You guys are gonna look at it and say, hey, this is in the commercial district, but hey, in the back of your mind, you know, you've got this COPUD as well. So maybe it fits, and maybe that's where the rezoning comes in. Just a
There's
thought.
Do you guys want a copy of this? There's a bunch of questions that need to be considered for a rezoning request. Would you like a copy of this? Maybe you can. There's questions like, are there substantial reasons why the property cannot be reasonably used as zoned? It's just a bunch of questions.
Sure. Yes.
Did you didn't make my worksheet?
So, I want to follow up on one thing that somebody said here. So there's not a section in our zoning ordinance about the rezoning process. Somebody said that. Who said that?
I said that.
Okay,
I
Doug
said
said that. So you're saying that's something that seems to be missing?
if you want to have, if you want to allow a process or a pathway for someone who owns a particular piece of property and wants to change that zoning. For example, we have industrial over here on Moore Road, industrial on the east side of Moore Road, and there's commercial property on the west side of Moore Road.
Right.
So, say hypothetically, Traverse Bay Plastics wants to expand their industrial. And they want bought up the land across the road that's commercial.
Right.
That would be a rezoning type request that they may want that to be rezoned from commercial to industrial. It's just an impact of the setbacks and usage of the land. But that's just one example, and it doesn't fit in the community, does it fit where it's located? Is it gonna interrupt because it's got ag on one side, or, you know, are there homes in there? There's other things you gotta factor into the mix. And that usually comes into a rezoning process. And people would, you know, in other townships, they actually have a process for someone to rezone their property from one district to another district.
Okay, but in the absence of having that process written in our zoning ordinance, wouldn't they just go to the zoning board of appeals?
We actually do.
Special.
You probably haven't seen it because it's probably stuck somewhere, but it's, you look at the new, it's Article 21. It says amendment.
Oh, to amend the zoning ordinance.
Right, which could be a text amendment, could be a zoning map amendment, so it's either one. But
Okay.
but we do have that.
So you're saying that is in the
It is,
document,
right.
not that it's not, it is in there.
It is
Okay.
called an amendment. So
Right.
it's, okay.
That's the existing language
Okay,
amendment.
Okay.
all right. Well, that was kind of a big learning experience. Any other comments on this topic of COPUD? Okay. Back to the agenda. All right, the last thing we have in this section to discuss is, this was brought up, Carl, by you last month. So starting on, I believe it's on page 32. This was driven by that note on the bottom of the one page that we looked at a minute ago that says variance provisions for the width to depth ratio will be found in General Ordinance 26, Land Division, Section 70. You remember bringing up this question, Carl?
Yes.
And so,
And Heidi just wrote this letter regarding that, the 4-to-1 ratio.
okay, hang on.
Heidi, this is your conclusion?
Mhm.
It is not our lawyers, our attorney's conclusion?
You gotta go to the state statutes, Carl.
Well, we had this come up at the ZBA last August specifically. And there is in the agenda for the meeting, a statement from our lawyers. And specifically during the meeting, I asked that question to our lawyers. And you would have to get the recorded meeting or look at the minutes and you can.
Hey, Carl,
It's not clear.
what question was it that you asked?
I asked
Just-
which applied, the
Okay.
state's ordinance with 5109B,
Mhm.
which says it does not apply to anything over 10 acres.
Mhm.
And the wording in there suggests that if the township wants it to apply, they have to say that. Somewhere in their ordinance say this applies to more than 30 acres. That's just kind of a suggestion, but ours makes no mention of that. And that was brought up by one of the attorneys. And I asked, I says, which is right? And if you look at the information we got from our attorneys, it doesn't say that. It doesn't come to our conclusion. I don't know what, all I'm saying is if we wanted to apply, we should put it in there somewhere. That's all.
Yeah.
Because it comes up and I don't know if that's in the current lawsuits that are going on or not, but
So I
that
guess,
was not, that had absolutely
No
nothing
clarity.
to do with our ruling.
so since we're all here, I think it is important. That's why I put 30 pages in the packet. And that took a lot of time to dig all this up, but if you turn to page 65 of your packet, there's this notation that we're talking about. So this is on page 65. As you go through this, and you'll see these are all a lot of the whole. This includes our land division ordinance. Now on page 65, this is the state of Michigan law. And then in section 560.109, if you look about 2/3 of the way down the page, it would be 560.109, item B. If you look at like the second to last sentence or the last sentence in there.
Mhm.
So this is talks about state law is 4-to-1, which is the same thing that is in our document that we looked at earlier about the width to depth ratio. So that's all very consistent. But what Carl, I believe, is referring to is there's this statement here that says the depth to width ratio requirements in this subdivision do not apply to a parcel larger than 10 acres. And then it has a comma, unless an ordinance referred to in section 5, which is on the following page, provides otherwise. So this
Sounds like
is
they put
what
it back,
he's saying,
yeah.
anything larger than 10 acres. So now turn the page over and look about 3/4 of the way down and find this item number 5. And that's where it says the governing body of a municipality, and then some other words, may adopt an ordinance setting forth standards authorized in that prior section 1B. So it basically says that the municipality can dictate whether this 1 to 4 goes beyond that 10 acres.
Yeah, it
That-
does.
That's the way I read it.
Yeah.
And so basically,
It gives
it
them
says
permission to do.
unless
so.
that gives us permission to say the ratio is 1 to 4.
And I was going to bring that package, but it's very extensive, but you can look it up online, and I just do not agree that our 4-to-1 ratio applies to anything over 10 acres. I don't object to it if we wanted to, but I would also point out that in every case that this has gone to the ZBA, the variance has been approved because of all the reasons that were said. It caused nobody any harm to their value of the property. It did justice to the owner because they did not cause the problem. And all that information was submitted to us at the meeting. Plus, I had also, looked it up before the meeting, but I don't,
But I
if we
think there's,
if we wanted to, but you gotta run that past our lawyer. That's just not right.
Well, this here, it sounds like it, I mean, that sounds like it's clear to me. I mean, we could have the lawyer look at it, but with what Linda read,
it appears
Yeah.
to me that if you're going to not meet the 1 to 4, you have the option of going to the ZBA, and the ZBA is required to use their criteria that's statutorily defined
Yeah.
to either allow or
Yeah.
disallow, and
Yeah.
it does say certain things of unusual topography
Mhm.
can be some of the criteria
Yeah.
used for that, but it doesn't say you're not bound to 1 to 4 if you're greater than 10.
yeah, it's not
To me-
thou shall, there's not a shall do, or a shall, when you see the term shall, that means you have a choice. This doesn't
So-
say that.
So it
Everything
basically
says all.
says that we have defined it here. We don't say anywhere in here things bigger than 10 acres don't apply. So, I mean, again, our responsibility on this project is to take all of our amendments and our existing zoning ordinance text and put it into an accurate document. This was kind of, to me, an ancillary question
Mhm.
that was asked. I thought it was helpful for people to look at the information.
Mhm.
I don't know that
It'd be
there's a
nice to have that
decision.
listed as a source, so somebody could go look at that up if they wanted to too, you know?
No, I don't.
So
But
maybe
it is hard.
on our ordinance.
Our
Give them the.
One of our duties is to enforce the ordinance wherever possible. If the person has caused the problem, then they may not be entitled to an ordinance. There was one issue from a previous, maybe back in the mid 2010 to 20s, it was appealed. The person had this piece of property, and no matter how he sliced it, one side or the other wouldn't meet the 4-to-1 ratio. And the zoning administrator worked with him on it, but it had to go to the ZBA for final approval, and they approved it. Because it did justice to him, it caused no problems to anybody else. It seemed the fairest way to handle it, other than having one piece of property not buildable. And this, all that's in the handout for that meeting last fall, and it's all online. I do have a copy at home.
Okay, so I think this was just a question that Carl raised, and so,
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything. Randy, do you have any other input or suggestion about, I'm uncomfortable adding additional text here. I think people can read what's here. It is a little convoluted to read it, I'll give you that.
But
But-
it's clear.
I think if you do the work, it's clear.
Well, here again, it's difficult because the existing ordinance has been amended several times and you can't look at one document and you got to look at
Well,
several.
I had to go through all those amendments, which sucked up the better part of half a day. Yeah,
Which is part of the problem with our zoning ordinance now.
right. But now you won't have to go through that because they did, I can tell you, they messed around with this ratio a lot over the years. It was modified quite a few times. So, and they changed the wording, created the table. All of this evolved over time. It started off with a 3-to-1 ratio and no table. So, is there anything or any notation, Randy, that we should be leaving for the future to clarify this further? Like, is this an opportunity in the future for a footnote or something?
I think it is. I think it's a separate a separate chunk of work that needs to happen to go through exactly not only with the depth ratio, but how many splits you're allowed to have.
I think you should be very careful, trying to do something other than the states, because as was said at our meeting, many of our properties do not meet that ratio, hundreds and hundreds. Therefore, anytime they tore down a building and tried to build a new one, they wouldn't be allowed because it doesn't meet the 4-to-1 ratio. There's so many things. I just leave it alone. And it does not apply to anything over. And why should it? Because every one of the, I asked that question in the meeting, what's the difference to this property, whether it is 4-to-1 or 6-to-1? And nobody had an answer. There was not one answer, against
We're
it.
not even fixing. Okay. I got 4 years of homework in this, you guys. There's a mistake made, you gotta fix it.
So, I mean, I believe at this point, what you're saying, Randy, is there could be some improved clarity. One thing that I found frustrating too is the land division ordinance also had quite a few amendments. So it was like the same kind of problem as what you have with the zoning ordinance. I had to look through all the amendments. And again, that's why there's this many pages in your
And
packet.
that's why
because
there's
I gave it
confusion
all
and that's
to
why there's difficulty. in
Right, so
administering it.
it's a very similar thing, and as frequently as the land division ordinance is used, I think it is important to note that that is something that I think, as we move forward and get through this project and the master plan, that should be discussed with the board too. Why aren't we also updating the land division ordinance? Because to incorporate all the changes,
Sure.
because you're making people's job hard. Am I right, Deb? Making job hard. Okay, we don't want to make.
The goal should be clarity here and it's not, we don't
Yes.
have it.
Okay, so do we want to just capture that thought in our minutes? I mean, it's a small item, but it would make sense for the land division ordinance to get updated to incorporate all amendments.
Put that on a priority list.
Because it's a significant document that goes right along with the zoning ordinance. I mean, to me, that's my biggest conclusion on that. And if there needs to be clarification of wording while you're doing that, I think it's a great opportunity.
I think Carl makes a good point though, in that, you look at the tax map there and you look at Skagamog Point Road. And I can't believe any of the lots in there meet 4-to-1.
Because
they
when they were all
don't.
built, it was
Yeah.
3-to-1.
But
Right?
that doesn't necessarily make them non-buildable or, it was.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
No, they're existing lots of record.
Their
They were
lots of
created
record,
law-
and at the time, it was 3-to-1.
They were
changed it
created
to
lawfully at the
4-to-1.
time, probably predates the land division ordinance.
Well,
They all do.
and it's not a determination of that the parcels comply with any of the
No.
ordinance or anything anyways.
We're talking about
So
future,
it's,
future lots and the idea is to prevent the idea of stripping off the road frontage with bowling alley lots, as I always called them. Where you just sit there and make a bunch of strips and as many lots as you can off of a farm. Without any concern or care to, how does that make sense as far as citing the homes?
And it is different, I don't know when those were platted off. Or
What,
divided.
Skagamog?
Yeah, I don't know in what years. I mean, a lot of them are really old, but,
Well, the ordinance relates to 3-to-1 and then it says where it's changed to 4-to-1.
right,
started
so that
from-
would make those a lot shorter, and they're not.
Close.
So, but, yeah, it's an interesting discussion, but yeah, And that's why some of these you do see, I've seen a couple that have houses double stacked on them.
Here's another example. He did the PUD along Elk Lake Road there and created a bunch of lots that don't meet 4:1.
Yeah, I know.
We did it as a PUD, so it's okay.
Yep.
Well, that's definitely different looking. Okay,
What a plug allows you to do.
so,
With differences.
all right, moving on the agenda, the last thing that we need to talk about. I'm gonna ask before we get to the last item, number V here. Are there any other items regarding the zoning ordinance rewrite that we need to discuss? I've gone through a lot today. Go ahead.
One of my topics was, well, I'm now, I think about us. Sorry. Go, continue on. And-
I mean, it
Well,
can
I know,
continue
I
on.
know I know it was. If there is a change to the zoning administrator site plan review forms, does that require any changes in the zoning?
I don't think so.
No, that's.
No, okay, so I can wait to my
Okay.
part. Okay.
So, I guess I'd like to, now Randy, you gave us a handout here, right?
I did, and with the
And
thought
then-
that
Yep.
we may be approaching the point of requesting legal review. We talked about that.
So you also sent me a motion that I put in the packet on page 69, 68 and 69.
Well, I handed out 2 pages there requesting for legal review of the clarified zoning ordinance and new zoning map. The question is, do you want to see this again before we do this, or are we ready to send this off now? I just,
Yeah,
what you have in this is just a description of the background of this, and I thought.
right.
And then the steps that we took to clarify this ordinance so that the attorney knows. And then our specific request for legal review, which is to look at both the marked up version and the clean copy. To review the general alignment with the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, to review the zoning map. Including the disclaimers, because the one disclaimer is from the county, but the other one is one that we wrote up. I think it took what Al had and made a few little changes, and then any other general recommended changes based upon recent court decisions or changes to state law that we may not be aware of.
So,
We tried to talk about bracketing that so that we didn't want necessarily to reproduce everything that was done.
right. So as I read through this is a really nice history, the first paragraph. This is kind of our current state and some of the problems that we've had in the past. And then you talk about the main elements that we've tried to address. And then the last page here, page 2 of this is specific, requested legal review. So you talk about, we're supplying basically a red line version and a clean copy. So the same exact documents that we use to do our review. Our reviews have been pretty lengthy, as you know, through several meetings. You're requesting the attorney to do a general alignment review with the Zoning Enabling Act requirements. Review the new zoning map and the associated text, the stuff that's in the lower left corner, including the map's disclaimers. So the text in the ordinance and the disclaimer on the map, and offer any general recommended zoning updates based on recent court decisions, et cetera.
I mentioned that we know that the ordinance needs updating in a lot of areas that we've just stepped aside, the sign
Right.
regulations, the PUD process that we just talked
Right.
about. And then the master plan itself contains a whole lot of
Right,
recommendations.
so you let him know about that, so he doesn't waste a lot of red ink on that. So, so I think the question in front of the PC at this point is, there were a couple teeny things noted as far as adding the Boardman River here and a couple other notes I made today.
Names of lakes.
Yeah, names of lakes, and I think you found a couple little tiny clerical errors there today. But are we to the point where we're comfortable talking to the attorney about doing a review. I think we should ask him, in my opinion, we should ask him how long and how much we should expect to pay for this review. I don't know if they usually ask how much.
No,
I
I
just
think
always
we
like
need-
to know how much.
I think we need to hold him to some standards. Ask him how much, how long, because what did we put in the budget for this?
I don't know.
Anybody still got a copy of the budget
Is that-
anywhere in their papers?
Has that budget, has the township's planning commission legal fees been paid for out of your?
I don't,
I
think
I
they're
don't
in-
know without reviewing
I think
it,
they're,
but we
I
can-
think they're in our budget.
Well, we can certainly review that offline. That
know, I
is
don't
easy to do.
think- I don't think it'd take him that long to review what he has to review in there because, we've already put the boundaries, we had the surveyor, help with the
Right.
boundaries. So there really isn't that much for him to review. If
But I think
if
we
he has
need
any
to put
changes,
regulations.
I certainly want to know why. he wants to
Exactly.
change.
That's
We're
the
not gonna
standard
change
I-
anything unless.
That's the standard I want.
There you
from
go,
anyone.
Michael. I wanna know how
And
long
not just
and
this
why.
time, but I don't really care about how long or, what I wanna know is why. If he wants to make a
Exactly.
change, I wanna know why.
Why?
We've had so much hard time getting that
Exactly.
information from the lawyers. Look, I don't care if they wanna change them, but I wanna know
I'm
why.
agreeing with you, Michael, 100%.
So
He
that's
does
the
not
main
tell us.
thing, the
Linda,
standard I think they should be held.
When we send that to him, we just give him a time limit within 30 days or whatever we decide a time limit, because we can't let it sit on his desk or whenever he
No,
gets
you
around to
tell
it.
this guy
You know,
who,
so
what, when, where, how, why.
what do you
and we
think
want it
about
back.
when we send it over there? Just tell him we're requesting it back and by X, by the end, whatever X
Give him
is.
a date.
And then,
Well, I would say
Be done
we
with it.
should be asking them worst case for it by the November meeting, but preferably by the October meeting. I realize that's kind of short, right? It's only like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen in October.
No.
But so the things that I wrote down is, you know, what's the estimate of the cost? And, you know, we're looking for this, we've been working on this a long time and we're being pretty specific
we
what
get it
we're
back?
asking for.
Yeah.
How long does it gonna take to get it back? And we don't want it to be 6 months. And then,
Okay,
and we want an
added to it.
explanation for any changes. We want him to cite a statute, et cetera.
would it be?
And we don't want him to rewrite or fix our grammar.
Yeah,
Please.
no, you don't wanna
You know.
rewrite it. If he wants us, if he
Alright.
isn't suggesting.
But I should
change,
give him, I
why?
would give him 3 weeks. I would not give him a lot of time. He he just needs to verify the writing on the bottom of this map, correct?
Right.
Give him 3 weeks.
So, do you usually talk to Chris Patterson, Randy?
I have, yeah.
Okay, I would suggest make sure that they don't push this to one of their, newer attorneys. You know, I would ask, you know, just be careful that they don't push you off. I think you're the authorized member that's allowed to speak to them,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So and you know, certainly the board then would need to review this afterwards. That's the next step. But I think getting them to make sure that we've done something that fully complies with the Planning Enabling Act. That's really the goal, right? Make sure he catches.
And
any red
acknowledging that we
flags.
have a lot of issues in here, but we're just trying to create a better foundation to work from. you know.
Exactly. And I think that you reviewing this with him personally, and I'd be happy to participate in that phone call if you think it would help. That we just have to understand where we are and where we're trying to get, and that we've spent an awful lot of time. I mean, has it been a year, you guys? I joined this
Boy,
group not,
Out of here.
it's been pretty close.
Been a long time.
okay, so it's kind of time to try and wrap that
To
up.
be done with it, you know,
Yeah.
all we have now is just to have him do a quick review and then we can send it to the board.
So do I have consensus that everybody's comfortable having Randy contact the attorney
As
and
long as
ask
we get a
these
date
questions?
Yes.
Yep,
and date.
And as long as it's reasonable, I think the only other item hanging out there is, do we wanna check our records to see, if we had a budget at all for attorney fees on the work we've been doing?
I think we do.
I'm sure we did.
I know that
don't
there's an attorney fee bucket for the township. What I don't know is if we allocated money for this.
I wanna say we allocated expense. Is there on that budget? Is there legal expense in there?
I don't remember without looking, but, would somebody like to volunteer to look that up? Is that something, Heidi, you think you can do, or would you prefer somebody else to try and find it?
Should be.
I'm not gonna
Should
do
be
it.
in the April packet. Should be in
Okay, I know
April's
where
packet.
the budget is online. It's posted. The final budget is posted on the main page. I guess I can
It's
look it
not
up.
gonna be broken down though.
I will look it up, and if I need help, I will call you.
That's
How's
fine,
that?
that's fine.
Okay.
It should be in the April packet, cause we had to turn in our budget. Actually, your budget, ladies and gentlemen, is due in January to the supervisor, FYI. Right in your bylaws.
That's great.
Yeah. we're
Linda
all
can,
looking forward to
Linda can
that.
write it just before she leaves and then she can
Yeah,
approve it.
yeah.
Well, just ditto what we did this year and you're good.
Isn't that how that
You're good.
Just
works?
ditto it.
Okay, all right, so just making sure everybody's comfortable, we'll go forward, we will ask these questions about the cost, time frame to do it, clarify, we don't want to write any recommended changes, we want the reference to the MCL, right? That's what we want. Okay, and then I volunteered to talk to him also, if you think that'd be helpful, if you don't think it's necessary, that's fine too. I think we all know Randy knows this better than anybody. Okay, good. Thank you for that. So we'll do that before submitting it to the township board. Okay, so let me get back to my piece of paper, which I moved it around. Here it is. Okay. Master plan is the next topic. So that's on page 69. Yeah, 68 and 69.
So there's also a handout that I distributed about this as well. In the last couple months, there have been a number of what I would call clarifications that have been brought up. I think they're quite minor. And there's a list here of what those are. I'll go through them. Page 11. Statements made in there about this is not the first master plan for Whitewater Township, unlikely to be the last. The reason for that is since the review and potential updates are required every 5 years, it's not, so we wanted to clarify that. Page 33, just rewording the first sentence, substantial efforts have been underway to remove dams and return the Boardman River to a more natural state. That's just clarifying that we're only talking about the Boardman River, nothing else. Page 46, the organization's mission, that's just clarification in terms, and then I think I had Traverse Region, it should be Grand Traverse Region. Page 100, the village area, should have said north of new M72. Page 102, the word C was, it just had EE, it didn't have the S in there for some reason. Page 109, there was a statement about in private roads that private roads must be fully constructed before adjacent parcels are sold to new home builders, or there's a guarantee such as a bond. That would be one instrument to guarantee the completion of the road. So that we didn't have, we're just adding the word such as a bond.
Okay.
Page 116, just about the traffic impact study to be completed as the proposed development is under consideration. In other words, you do the traffic impact study while you're reviewing the project so that you can potentially make changes to the driveways. On page 53, Mike and I had talked earlier this week about the fact that it's not clear about the water line that goes from Turtle Creek Casino down Old M72. I've been in touch with Josh, and the correct statement would be Whitewater Township has a water line from the Turtles Creek Casino generally down Old 72 to Mill Creek School. This water line includes about 12 fire hydrants, most of which are on the north side of Old 72 to enhance fire protection. We're still trying to get a hold of the the size of that water line, but we don't know that, whether it's a 6-inch or 8-inch or 4-inch, whatever, but if I get that information, I can include that as well. And then lastly, a statement on page 114 about the MPOs. There's not much mentioned in there, but just a little bit of history. It is very much a national thing, where MPOs were created in the early 1960s in relationship to a Transportation Planning Act. The federal government included the policy of creating MPOs to better develop local transportation plans in urbanized areas. When they're designated, they become responsible for preparing long-range transportation plans and developing actual improvement projects using federal funding. There's about 400 of them around the country. Surprised me.
You want to tell them what MPO means?
Oh, Metropolitan Planning Organization. This box would be next to where that's spelled out, so I didn't bother putting it here as well. So just 3 or 4 sentences describing what an MPO is. That came up, of course, in our discussion about that with the township board, as well as potentially participating in that group at some point in the future.
Well, I would be willing to make that motion.
So the motion on page 69.
Can I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Motion to submit the draft master plan, parentheses with the amendments described tonight, to the Whitewater Township Board for the following purposes. 1, board review and comment on the draft. 2, authorization to distribute the draft for comments to all entities previously notified of the intent to adopt, amend, and
A master.
notified of the intent to adopt, amend,
Or amend.
or amend.
It's, I think, or
Yeah.
amend.
Or amend a master plan in accordance with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. 3, Planning Commission requests that the Township Board formally act to assert its right, in parentheses, or not to assert its right, unparenthesized, to approve a master plan in accordance with MCL 125.3843.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Points to bring up.
Go ahead.
So I had intended to have the presentation here because there's some material that we need to address with regard to the future land use map. Let me distribute these handouts here. I don't have it as a PowerPoint, so
Oh, then,
I just wanted to. Is it more?
yeah, there's
Yeah.
more.
Should be enough copies. So-
Oh, it went all the way around.
Yeah, we need 2 more.
Yeah, one for Carl.
One for Carol, one for Paul.
And we need one for Ken.
So
Pete.
We need 2 more.
Okay.
I've been called worse.
Here.
Oh,
Does everybody have one? No.
You don't have one? Maybe share this.
Well, again, I was gonna do this as a PowerPoint, but we don't have the projectors, but, so the one requirement of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act is that we have a generalized future land use map. And that shows as map 11, it's on page 91 of the master plan. You've seen this before. We created this largely mirrored off of the existing zoning map. We did that, however, before this map was done. So there was sort of a need to circle back to that, so I was gonna put both of them up on the screen. So we see what's on page 91 of the master plan, what's on our zoning map now, which is that map up there. And then finally, the last page puts the 2 side by side. And I wanted to note the differences between the 2. First of all, one of the recommendations in the master plan is to eliminate the residential zoning along the creeks in the north part of the township. So that's not shown in the generalized future land use plan. I took out the commercial space that's down there at Supply Road. I think no one really understood where that came from or why. And then also I noticed after looking at the new map, I'm just gonna get here. I think this line needs to be adjusted somewhat. to compare with the, what's on the map 11.
I'm not sure I know what change.
Okay, so if you look at map 11, it doesn't quite follow this same shape.
Right,
Yeah,
It's similar, but not quite.
right.
it's kind of a bullet shape instead of a.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I think there was a change there.
So we'll make it. We'll take the shape that's on this map and transfer it to the other map,
Right,
right?
the idea is that we're trying to mimic the zoning map. For the most
Are you
part.
talking about the arc of the railroad grade?
No,
No.
talking about
This
the
line here?
commercial.
No, the red part.
No, the red.
No, the red
commercial
part.
Blob, it's not the same shape for some reason.
Oh, you're right. Oh, yeah, I see.
Okay.
Yep.
So the other thing that I'm, uh, the other thing that I'm noticing, and maybe I'm misreading it, but it looks like you're suggesting adding more recreational areas on
It's
the
the same.
future. It's the same, then why is it colored green? I'd like,
Oh, no, it's
the colors are different.
the agricultural is the light green
Oh,
and the recreational is a dark green.
can you use the same
Maybe I should
color
flip
scheme
those.
on these?
Yeah.
Can you use the same color scheme on the two maps? Because, yeah, because agriculture's white on the
Yes.
official zoning map, so you need the same color scheme.
I can do that.
I'm still confused by the dark green that I'm suddenly seeing up in the ag district. There's light green and dark green in here. I'm not sure if that's
Oh.
trying to show wetlands.
It's the underlying air photo is darkening that up.
Oh, is that trees?
Yeah, it's wetlands. That's the wetland over there and the wetland at the,
By Petobica, yeah,
yes.
okay,
So that problem would go away if we made it white.
okay. All right, I was just wondering, okay,
That's a good idea.
okay,
Then this would show up pink again or?
same color schemes.
Unit development on Elk Lake Road. Oh, that's the other one, the legend is off the map here.
It is,
That's.
because this is supposed to be a generalized future land use map. It's not exactly the zoning ordinance.
I have another question, because I see another red herring on this current map. This mobile home park thing,
Yes.
I don't know anything about that. But I don't know why I would want a high density mobile home park in the middle of the rec area. Like, why would I want that? It seems strange to me. I know this red triangle is strange and it's like a mistake or something that never happened that we need to undo. I think that was what Kim told us. Right?
I don't know why that's there, but I can guess. Because the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act says that you have to provide for all reasonable uses in a community. You can't use your zoning ordinance to exclude things. And so it's often you see mobile home parks.
Yeah, I always
Put
wondered
different
about
places.
that too.
But it tells us we actually zone one, right? I mean, maybe we have to leave it there for now if we don't know what we're talking about, right? Because I sure don't know.
If the enabling act says we have to have one, then we'll have to keep it.
That's something we're gonna change right now anyways.
Right.
Right.
No. Okay. All right. But I think we had enough information about this red triangle to know that that was like a concept that somebody had at one point that never flew.
It sounded like it was something the state was working towards doing, but it never happened.
Right. Okay. So we were comfortable undoing that one. All right, so even.
So then my question would be is, do you want to see a new version of the master plan before you approve this going forward? Or?
Because of this.
Yes.
I think I can trust you to do the
I think
math.
so too.
I would hate to see it.
I
delayed,
think
you know.
prolonging it for that and,
Okay.
come on, the color.
My motion still stands.
Do you have to get a third party to do this change, or
Yes,
if
I-
you're capable of doing it, I would say just go ahead and do it. And, you know, honestly, I would like to give the current board an opportunity to comment on it. You know, the next step is they have to look at it. The biggest thing they have to do per the process is authorize it for distribution. And then this third item is they have to, get me if I'm wrong on this, Randy, they have to assert or decide whether they will approve the master plan in accordance or whether they will leave it to us to approve. So they have to weigh in on that.
They have to decide.
They have to decide.
If they can't just not decide, they have to make a decision according to that.
Okay, so, I think, I don't honestly know if they will take this up or not before they're done with their term of office, but I think it would be good for us to at least give
Put
them
it on
the
the agenda.
opportunity.
Give them the chance, yeah,
Give them the opportunity.
they did start it.
Yeah,
Make them accountable.
okay. So I think we have a motion
You have support?
from Keith with support from Heidi, so I think it's appropriate for a roll call vote on this.
It has to be a roll call. You're asking for board decision.
Yep, that's what she just said. All right, I'm gonna find my list there. All right. Roll call vote. Al,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Heidi,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Keith, yeah. Linda,
Yes.
Denise,
Yes.
okay, all yeses.
So let me ask a clarifying question about process, because I don't want to I want to make sure we're supporting Randy with this. So Randy, you will provide the documentation, right?
Yep,
And,
provide them with copies.
with the meeting minutes as reference, I can, as the chair, notify the board. Okay, so as soon, and I assume you can have the documentation soon, right?
Give me a week or so to get.
And you will post it to the website. So that should all line up quite nicely, right? So you'll
Should.
have the documentation and we'll have to give that to Ron Pop to upload onto the website. And you'll have hard copy available, right?
Yep.
And then we'll have the meeting minutes with the motion and the approval. And there we go, right? I close it up with a notification. Okay, so I'll make sure I follow up if I don't hear from you folks.
So just to be clear, though, I know there's been material in the packet before about the process, so the distribution happens to the adjacent jurisdictions, it comes back, you consider any comments, and then you make whatever changes, then there's a public hearing that happens for any public member to come up, and it's a public hearing, much like a special use.
Mhm.
You would have-
The only thing that's a little tough about that is as we approach timing, you know, for a lot of people are away for holidays. I mean, the adjacent townships, it's 60 days, right?
63.
63.
Okay, so 2 months, so probably best case, that's November, December. Then it comes back. I guess you guys collect any recommended changes, right? You can make some modifications. So maybe public hearing, I don't know, March.
Yeah, that's the problem with the Planning Act. It just drags out the last approval process for 4 to 5 months.
Well, you might get some feedback from the board too. So you'll
Oh, yeah,
have
yeah.
adjacent communities. I don't know how much they usually comment, and then the board and
They typically.
then the
don't
public.
comment, but
Usually they don't comment. Usually they say, oh, what a nice job.
Okay.
But I highly doubt that's gonna happen.
Well, we do have a notice in our packet from Antrim County to look at theirs.
Was it that we're looking at it or that they're
They
starting
adopted.
it?
They're adopted,
They
Yeah.
adopted.
They adopted. I couldn't remember for sure.
so we do, but
Okay. Any other comments on master plan?
I'd like to apologize for going off on a rant last month. Kim's paperwork and then Randy's rebuttal. Being in the package, I don't think Randy, I don't think there's anything wrong with Randy giving a rebuttal, but to me, the rebuttal seemed like it was an answer from the planning commission without somebody's name on the paperwork. I think the public can view it that way too. And the Kim's information that she sent to us was such a big group of information. And she's one of the few people in the public, not the ROS committee and not us, the public, who came and had comments to make to us. I personally felt like we should have discussed both those documents together as a group. I went over and talked to Randy about it on a more personal level, and he made a couple changes that I think were appropriate, but I personally think it should have been a group effort. Just because I think it doesn't mean the group thinks it. And I'm much more comfortable making changes when it's a group discussed change than on an individual basis. I personally think our business needs to be conducted in this room. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy going over and hanging out at Randy's place and talking, but our business is to be conducted in here, in my point of view, and that's what that was all about. So I apologize for my craziness.
All right, I have nothing for new business. Our next meeting, as I said earlier, is gonna come about real quickly, October 2. So like usual, the due date for any items for the packet will be 10 days in advance of that. Because then I'm supposed to have it to you guys by 7 days in advance. So that would be September 23rd, so that's fast, okay? And that brings us up to public comments. Okay, I see Connie Highmore making her way to the podium.
Good evening, Connie Highmore, Bags Road. I can certainly understand that there can be confusion for commission members and citizens reading ordinances and general ordinances or laws of any kind. I know that in doing many hours of research, one thing was true. If the ordinance directs you to continue to another area, you must continue on. You don't complete the law until you reach the end of the directive. As a parable of sorts, if I buy a bicycle and the box is marked assembly required, I will have work to do. If I start on page 1 and skip pages 5, 6, and 7 and end on page 10, I may end up with a bicycle with no handlebars or pedals. Every step of the instructions are important. You've got to do the work. Laws are similar. There are state laws and local laws. If the ordinance states you start at point A, then leads you to paragraph 5, you must go to paragraph 5. Or you too may end up with a bicycle with no pedals or a parcel created against the ordinances of Whitewater Township. Another important point to make, government officials must be very cautious when making statements during meetings. Citizens trust what is being said. When statements are made without reference and later found out not to be true, people lose confidence in the leadership. Furthermore, citing state statutes or local ordinance gives confidence to the statements you make. However, you must follow through to the end. The state allows local government to make their own laws. So a state mandate may not be true or the same in local law. I feel like there's still confusion with Mr. Roble concerning the 10-acre issue. Misinformation is dangerous. I'd like to request he get individual counsel on this subject from the PC chair or the zoning administrator. He's the PC rep for the ZBA and needs to be clear about this law as he is a pivotal member. I thank you all for your service in the seats that you sit in, whether it be the ZBA, the PC, the board. I appreciate all of your work. Thank you.
Anybody else in the hall for public comment?
Heidi Valmy, 8388 Winnie Lane. I'm gonna talk to you as a private citizen right now. And here's why. You have to read a lot to do this job. I have 4 years of homework almost in this land division. My statements stand correct. And somebody proved me wrong. I also need to let you know that per your bylaws, we really need to read those, people. The budget is due to the supervisor January 1st, the last time we looked at our budget. Yeah. Who's gonna take this over? We also have an annual report provided by the chair. Last comment, Bob was gonna take that over, but Bob made mistakes in our annual report. So it was gonna be up to all of us to review and make sure come January, we had reviewed it. I request that you put your annual report review on your agenda in November. It's due in April. I won't possibly be in a chair after October. You guys, please. It's so simple. Michael, thank you for your discussion. The only problem that bothered me with the person submitting all that information is why does everybody do everything last minute? This master plan's been going on for months. And, you know, people want to pay attention. They need to pay attention all the time, not when they feel like it. I'm not leaving the room. I'm just changing seats. Michael, you know how long I've been watching the PC. Guys, you got to do your homework. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in the hall with a public comment? Okay, how about on Zoom? Do we have anybody raising a hand on Zoom? Okay, looks like nobody raising a hand on Zoom for public comment. PC discussion and comments. The first item here is keynotes to share at the next regular township board meeting.
I think by telling them, here's the master plan, that's beautiful. I mean, is there anything else you guys want me to discuss? The changes we made to the zoning map, maybe that was important, maybe?
You mean adding the labels for the lakes and the river?
Yeah, but hang on a minute. Did we not discuss did we skip something? We're not discussing the training session at all?
No, we're getting to that. That's
Okay,
under
all right, that's all
continuing
I
ed.
have.
Okay, so
Unless you guys tell me that you got something else besides presenting the master plan to them.
I think the only other thing is just that we're proceeding to make sure that the consolidated zoning ordinance meets the Planning Enabling Act, right, Randy? So we're just soliciting what would I call that? A brief review to make sure we're compliant. All right. Action items. I think the action items that I thought were key here were We talked about Randy is gonna be getting in touch with the attorney and hopefully has positive results so we can send the documents to them for the review that we discussed. I said I would look up on the budget for if we have attorney fees allocated to our group or if it's part of a large pool. That's just for information. And then we talked about the game plan for getting the master plan over to the board, which is basically meeting minutes that have to be done within the next 8 business days, and Randy updating the map and getting the document ready to post and publish. The only other action item I want to bring up, it was a little bit lumpy this past month. When I finished the packet, I had to send a bunch of emails to you guys to ask, who wants a copy, a hard copy. And so I wouldn't mind if somebody wants to help me with that this month, especially as we're getting through not having Lois. It's just like a little bit of extra work for somebody to come in here, run the copies, put clips on them and send them.
I can help you. Yeah,
You would
just-
be willing to help?
Yeah, just
Okay.
let me know.
Okay, all right. I learned how to use the copier this past month and needed to learn that anyway, so, okay, all right.
If Deb's here, she can show me where the choke is.
And Mike, you got yours? Did Al bring you your packet? Okay,
Lois brought it to me, but Al brought me some stuff, but Lois brought the packet to me.
okay,
That's-
all right.
Which packet is this?
The packet for
For
the
the month.
meeting,
You wanna,
paper
So, yeah.
packet.
Yeah, see, I don't do the computer, so I have to have a paper packet every time. So, and Lois has been bringing it to me all this time because she just lives just across the highway.
Right,
So I'll just have to make another arrangements to pick it up.
I can.
I
usually
can bring it to
mine.
you, Mike, too, if I'm going.
So I usually get one printed, it's harder for me to follow on the screen, so.
and it's probably gonna be good for me to show you how to do that anyway, so it can be supportive, people doing this. Okay, so just in preparation for that, can I have a show of hands, how many paper copies I should be producing this coming month? Okay, so it's everybody but Heidi, is that right?
I print my own.
Okay, well, it's okay, that we can hit an extra number on
Then
that.
give me one, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so 1, 2,
And we'll-
7. Randy, you're okay using the computer? All right, so it's gonna be 7 copies, okay.
I looked up the bylaws for
Killing a tree.
changing positions. It says if you're not if nobody gets reappointed, you have to stay there. So the option is really up to these people sitting at this
Yeah.
table to make a decision so that you don't have to sit there. But that's how it's worded. I was gonna make a couple phone calls around and see how other people do it.
Do is fill some seats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is the most important thing, folks. Honestly, yes, we need to make sure.
Fully man or woman.
Yeah, so it's really important to talk to people that you think would be helpful on here. I think actually somebody mentioned to me recently, having somebody that has building experience, knows how to read blueprints and understands situating a building on a parcel is helpful. So, just kind of think it through, it all helps. Okay, any other comments from anybody?
I'm not gonna be here next month. And I was playing around with the idea of not being here in November, but I think that's probably.
Yeah, but here's the problem. That's hunting season.
That's.
There should be no meetings in hunting season. I am sorry. This entire community state shuts down for 3 weeks in
I
November.
definitely will not be here next month.
Okay,
I
and
still would like
so-
to read the packet.
I was gonna ask you, do you still want a packet?
I still want the
Okay,
packet. It
yeah,
helps me keep up.
okay, good. Well, I think it's going to be a slimmer packet, maybe a shorter meeting. Okay,
You will be in here in October or November?
I won't be here in
Absent in
October.
October.
I will try to change my plans and be here in November.
But November's hard. It's hunting season.
Okay. All right, continuing ed, with bated breath now, we've got Heidi and Deb to give us, Deb provided a lot of detailed slides starting on page 70. of the seminar that they went down to Cadillac with the MTA. And it involves short-term rental and some other stuff. So go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, this was hot topics in planning and zoning at the Cadillac MTA. It was Catherine Kaufman. I don't know if you've ever been to any of her seminars. She does a lot of these. A lot of them are short-term rentals and renewable energy. It's a big deal right now. And the other guy was Seth Coaches, and they're both attorneys out of Portage, Michigan. The short-term rentals, anything defined as less than 30 days, be it daily, weekly, or weekends, to regulate or not to regulate. They gave 2 slides, pages 5 and 6. It is a huge ordeal. It's really changing the look of every community that has accepted in short-term rentals. Changes the character, the noise, the traffic, parking issues, impact on adjoining properties, affordable housing impact, driving up the cost of housing, employees, workers priced out of the community, impact on school enrollments, and impact on community organizations, and decrease in permanent resident population. That is if you decide you want it, regulate it, license it, whatever. Some of the reasons no to regulation is tax dollars for the township, supports the tourist industry, allows people to keep their houses by earning income to pay their taxes and make their mortgage payments. It's not a change of land use. It's still residential land use in nature. All impacts can be managed by a police power or ordinances. Should not single out a specific land use for extra regulation. It's free market. The biggest thing they said is you need a municipal civil infraction ordinance in place, because I have to have some way to enforce this. So the 2 things is you've got to have a civil infraction ordinance in place, and you've got to have regulation and an ordinance of how you're going to deal with it if you choose to do that, go that route. But if you don't have those 2 things before you go to licensing short-term rentals, it's going to be a
Gonna
huge
have
problem. Anyway, lack of enforcement severely hampers effectiveness. Is evidence supporting consistency. I mean, there's some short-term rentals I'm having to go visit like every single week. I mean, the expense alone in trying to track these is incredible. And now I've got to send them 2 letters. I've got to knock at the door. I've got to take photos. I've got to have consistency. I got to send it off to the board. The board has to make a decision. Do they want to forward it to the attorney? I send it on to the attorney. Got one example. And the attorney's like, well, do you want me to send 2 more letters? I'm like, no, I want you to send 1 stern letter. We want compliance because we don't allow it. So if your zoning ordinance does not state it's a permitted
Listen to
use,
this, we had to repeat it.
if it doesn't say you can do it in the zoning ordinance, you cannot do it.
Yeah.
That's the way the ordinance is. That's why we have it.
Repeat after me. That's basically what was told to us.
And the interesting thing was short-term rentals. If you rent your home 14 days or more, you have to pay federal income tax on that money.
Absolutely.
So that is a requirement by law. So
People
That-
are jumping.
I don't think a
taxes.
lot of people realize that. I mean, not only are they paying to Airbnb and everyone else, because when I went and looked at the geodesic domes today, he's like, it might be $500 a night on Airbnb, but they get hit for so many fees. So he's flipping all of his stuff to a private website so he doesn't have to go through Airbnb. Anyway, but personally, slippery slope changes the character of your community in a big way. Short-term rentals, it's going to be a big decision, but they've had issues. I mean, they're having major issues. I don't know if you guys keep up on anything going on in the communities, but Airbnb's being sued. People have had bats, people have had bees, people have had all kinds of craziness go on. People's homes have been destroyed. There's a lot of communities that have put moratoriums on. They have shut it down. They have, but once they start it, you can't rein it back. So right now we don't have it. So something to strongly think about. The other big hot topic was renewable energy, which is wind and solar and battery storage of these things. There were 2 new laws that went into play. One is PA 233. And those laws are all going to take effect 11/29/24. Now, the areas this is really impacting is the southern part of the state. Kind of Southwest Michigan is getting pummeled with this right now. Ludington got hit with it a while back in Mason County when they put in all those big turbines, wind turbines. And I don't know if you've ever driven through any community and seen big wind turbines everywhere. But the state is now requiring that we have 60% of renewables by the year 2026. So everyone is scrambling to try and figure out how do we get renewable energy in place for solar, wind. And then when you get into the battery storage, you got a whole nother issue. But PA 234 limits local zoning, and anybody that had a vested right as of January of 21, they get to do it. It went into effect 213 of 24. But basically, if somebody's putting in a big wind farm, which we don't have anything in this township at this point, I've had individuals want to put solar on their roof or put a solar panel on their next to the house, but nothing the size that they talked about, which are, they actually
Acres and
amended,
acres.
they amended the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act to account for this. So solar energy is 50 megawatts. 1 megawatt equals, you need 5 to 10 acres to do 1 megawatt. And this is where they're making energy and they're selling it onto the grid. And what they've run into is multiple townships, multiple counties, all close to one another. If they get banded, they're exceeding this 50 watts, and then they've got to have agreements between these communities. And if they don't have these agreements in place, it's kind of a crap show. So everything is being governed by the Michigan Public Service Commission, the MPSC, and they're constructing a utility scale of all renewable energy facilities. All the applications are going through them. So if you don't have an ordinance or a CREO, which is a, I don't know, what did I know I put it in here somewhere. Oh yeah, the Township Compatible Renewable Energy Ordinance. And we don't have a CREO. And that was a big thing. I'm supposed to make sure our supervisor knows we don't have a CREO. If anyone asks, we don't have a CREO. Anyway, that was reinforced over and over at the meeting. But for solar energy, 50 megawatts, wind energy, if it's 100 megawatts, battery storage of 50 megawatts. So they get into your lighting, they get into what your setbacks have to be, how big the fin is, and how far off a neighboring property, how much flicker you can have. So can those fins still be spinning and reflect onto a neighboring parcel? There's all these rules that come into play. Kind of hoping this doesn't really hit us too bad, but just, it's one of those things just to be aware of. If you have an existing project, expansion or repowering requirements, that's why I gave you guys the entire list of all the information that's in there, but it gets into the setbacks, how much noise, what's the impact on dark sky, what's the height restrictions, what's the lighting restrictions. But when you have some of these battery storage, then you got a whole nother issue with what's your emergency response plan going to be? Because you're not going to go out there and just throw water on it. If it is a problem.
You're gonna be foaming it from helicopters, because you can't, people can't do anything with it.
But so far this year, I've seen no any applications at all that anybody's anticipating a wind farm or a solar farm.
Acme's got one going.
There's-
off the Bates.
There were lots of questions and answers throughout this period on this 3-hour presentation. Majority of the questions, I think, were about the STRs, the short-term rentals. But the power being sold, battery storage issue where farms are near several townships, linking them together. And the state is who's going to enforce a lot of that. If the neighboring communities don't have this regulation that's consistent with all of them. They gave an example of one community, one county copied another county's CREO. And they forgot to change all the townships within that law.
Yeah, they
and
should have changed all
within
the
their
names in the paper.
And so when they got sued, they started looking at the paperwork and realized, oh, we changed our county's name, but we didn't include all of our townships that are included in this. And so it was worthless. Another reason why people should read their paperwork. Couple of hot potatoes that came up. One was difficult meetings that we've never experienced in this township. Cameras, are there signs up And I wondered about this because I've never seen signs up here in this building that says, you know, audio and or video recording is in place. But you actually have to put
You're
signs
supposed to put
up,
Signs up.
and there's no signs around here that say that this is on Zoom or anything else. But there is actually an MCL, which this one I loved, MCL 750.539A was on slide 45. A private place means a place where one may reasonably expect to be safe from casual or hostile intrusion or surveillance, but does not include a place to which the public or a substantial group of public has access. So if I'm in a meeting somewhere, I shouldn't be intruded upon, which I thought was great that I have a
Right, so
MCL I
let's
can
see, I'm not
reference.
An MCL member.
Controversial topics are large developments, renewables, but keep in mind, there's a directive within the state of Michigan to get to 60% renewables by 26. I've never heard that, but that's going to be a pretty
That's
big
2
push.
years, Deb.
I know.
Not even.
Decisions of local government, general distrust of government, gravel mines, marijuana regs. They talked about, you know, before meeting policies, training, scheduling, you know, difference between conflict and crisis. That was slide 49. You know, create your policies now. Don't wait until your issues arise. And 3 key things that I took away was make sure you have a good facilities use policy, meeting rules of order policy, and a safety policy. I think it was slide 50. And remember, if it doesn't state you can do it in the zoning ordinance, it is not allowed. So that was your tidbit from training in Cadillac. And you all have copies of the slides. If anyone would like to meet with me on the side, you know, I would love to get out of here in less than 3 hours. Okay. Any questions? Cool, great.
Thank you. All right, I think that brings us to Denise. You have, oh, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
Well, I got something to say, but you know,
Okay,
until after you have something.
okay.
Oh, okay. I had some articles in the packet. One was the Michigan Act says landowners are liable for legacy farm pollution. So basically, if you read through that, the law changed in April of 23. I haven't reviewed this recently. But anyway, at the time before this ruling, if a farmer or another company polluted the land and then they sold it, and then the new owner found out that the land was, you know, a regulator came in and said the land's polluted, the new owner could say, well, I didn't do it. I bought the land and it was like this. So there was no liability because the prior owner had no liability because they no longer owned it. So kind of a no liability on anybody. Now, after the ruling, if you buy it, you own the liability. So I was thinking of this in terms of farm pollution. There's been a couple of farms that, if you read any articles about it, chemicals turning up wells in near Grand Rapids. And so that was resolved by pollution from 3M, and they had to put in water lines for everybody. Forever Chemicals, a risk to farms. This farm, and I read an article, a different one than this. What the farmers were doing is they were saying they were organic and they were getting the sludge from the sewer systems, the cities, and they had forever chemicals in it, but they didn't know that, so they put this sludge all over their property for fertilizer, and then they failed their organic testing. And actually, this one farm in Brighton, Michigan, he was shut down from selling either his meat or his cattle because of contamination from forever chemicals. So no animals or meat were allowed to leave his farm. So he's out of business. And then again, just EPA issues emergency order to stop use of pesticide Dactyl, August 6, 2024. All of this is, I'm just bringing to the point of maybe when we are looking at land divisions, if the zoning administrator was looking at land divisions and somebody was going to do a subdivision on property, that it would be a checkbox, a mandatory checkbox on the form that says I've done a water quality sampling and of certain chemicals and pesticides or herbicides that PFAS, and have the results with the zoning administrator's form, so we could say, you know, you can build, but you are going to have to put in complete water treatment systems in every house that you build, so that the new owners and their families aren't hit with that $10,000 bill. Or I just,
Mean for cleaning up the land?
if they can't clean up, if your water is polluted and you find out, you know, if they know that when they build, they should, it depends. It's like, the polluter is when do you want the liability that, you know, on a balance sheet, that you take the expenses and balance it against the income that you made? So is it the person, for example, if it was a farm that polluted the land when they sell it, should they have the water test done then? Or is that the way it should?
Anytime I've bought a home, I've always had the water tested before I ever closed on the property. So
Buyer beware.
it's buyer beware.
But it's
As long as it's disclosed to them from the seller to the buyer, it's the buyer's responsibility to
Right.
review it.
I have a water test. It was hardness and nitrates and
Well,
E. coli.
But
and-
I'm not gonna, on the zoning or, unless you're gonna change the zoning ordinance and make the zoning administrator responsible for this water quality thing. That's what the health department does for the county. So that would be a county thing that would need to be addressed.
Okay, but the township couldn't make their own regulation a little bit more.
I don't think we
Gotta
want
be
to
a
step
coordinate.
on
I
the
don't
health
know.
department. I don't think we'd have authority to. But I do know what you're saying. It's due diligence. When you're doing something like on oil wells, for instance, something I know, there are facilities, you have to have 4 monitoring wells and the third party draws from those every 6 months and checks for any contamination. So it's just due diligence, I think, but the farmer who's buying this other farm, let's say, he's the one who should go do some soil samples. It'd be up to him, I would think, to do his due diligence before he purchased it.
That's the way it is now at buyer beware, but
Mhm.
and this is off the federal EPA website, I believe. It says
Mhm.
Before purchasing a home in a rural area, the buyer should determine the amount and quality of water and should locate the waste disposal system.
Mhm.
And it says, similarly, land use or zoning maps can show where planners have designated uses that may be considered detrimental to home ownership. And many planning agencies have evaluated and classified the land for preferred and alternate uses. One way to obtain information on previous land use is to contact local county or town planning or zoning boards. Their records may show that land was formerly used for agriculture, landfill, or industrial mining purposes. Landowners can then better evaluate what past land use practices should be considered in planning future land use. So in a way, when, you know, if we ever go to, as a planning agency, they're saying that we should evaluate what past land use practices should be considered in planning future land use. I mean, that's why I'm trying to figure, I wanted to bring this information to you and pose it as a question for you to think about. Because I personally, when I moved here 14 years ago, shortly after I moved in, I spoke to a neighbor, I met a neighbor and they said, well, I don't drink the water. And he anecdotally gave me health issues that some of them had experienced. So I called Eagle or EGLE, and the guy said, well, I wouldn't drink the water because all the pesticides that from the farming around you. And so I've been buying water ever since I've been here.
Have you ever had it tested?
I've had it tested when I moved in for nitrates, E. coli, the mandatory ones, and hardness. But I didn't do any, it's called VOC samples.
Yeah.
And that's the organic compounds of And there are a lot of them, and PFAS, like they were saying, farmers, and I believe I grew up on a farm that we dumped our own trash in the back in a low area.
And buried it.
Did you have a pit?
No, I won't say, but I mean, it was an acceptable thing to do at the time, but now they're saying, if you put it in a swampy area, it just, filters down, and they are forever chemicals, so.
It's not that expensive if you wanted to. There's a couple places in Traverse. I did it on our well before the hops
Mhm.
came in and put it, I run an extended analysis. And, I think they come out, took a sample and run the analysis. Everything's fine, but now I have the baseline.
Yeah.
And just like you, if you have any doubts, if you're uncomfortable, you should just get a test run.
Yeah, the downside of getting it tested is if I do that and there is something, I have to disclose it when I sell my house.
Yeah,
And then the price of my.
that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
but a whole house treatment system would be $10,000 to $20,000. And that's a lot of money. It's not just a little filter in a line. It's
I have
like,
3 filters. I have a reverse osmosis in my house and it filters out right down to PFAS. And I actually went to a presentation a year ago of PFAS, because it's a huge issue in the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And they've gone, there used to be parts per billion, or now they've gone to parts per trillion when it comes to tracking PFAS, because they're so tiny and it's coming up in plants, the animals are eating it, and it's just constantly being cycled through everything. And it's everywhere. It's in Teflon and it's all these different components. Anything that's waterproof is kicking off a PFAS of some sort. So it's just one of those things. I mean, I have reverse osmosis because my well was fine, but I wasn't gonna gamble on it, so.
Yeah.
She's watching turnout here.
Well, yeah, I do that at the station.
I'm just saying.
But there are options, but I would not wanna put my name to a property as a zoning administrator, say, oh, your water's fine. Cause that is not my bailiwick. I mean, that's why we have a health department and county and state agencies that monitor that. And just like the farmer, they don't disclose it.
Yeah.
It is fire, where it's just like having a buried gasoline tank or diesel tank underneath the farm.
Yep, and then you go
That-
find
That
it.
they just kind of blew out the tank on top and covered it up, and you don't know what's under there until it starts rupturing. Yeah, whatever.
Well, I think there's also some liability if the township starts commenting on people's property or
Yeah, it
what
doesn't
they
sell. Yeah.
think, or if the.
That's creating a
township-
risk.
Yeah, it's a big risk if if the township starts making statements about, you can make statements that are public record. But if you start offering any opinions or suggestions to test and talking a lot like that, I mean, that's a liability. That can be considered defamation to a property owner, and you can imagine what the repercussions could be of that liability.
I'm not talking about hearsay or anything. I'm talking about an actual water test. But that's when I read these articles, I just feel sorry for somebody that buys land and someone young, they don't even think about that. I'm pretty old and I thought that my well would be great. So.
Well, it is an interesting discussion, and especially, I mean, I'm learning something just listening to you guys talk here.
So,
I wrote down all
Anyway.
about water tests.
It's an issue everywhere.
yeah. So
Water's a big deal.
Yeah.
Everybody wants clean water.
Yeah, so this is just Grand Traverse County positive VOC samples.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not like there are just one or two there.
No, there's a lot, Denise.
Yeah.
'Cause you put the
Like
fertilizer.
there's
in
one right there
farmer.
in Williamsburg. that they speak
I
about.
haven't looked
Not
at,
put it face, but
yeah, it's close, but I mean, it's concerning. I just didn't know if it was a comment, where it could be put somewhere in our master planning review, or I don't know.
I don't know, you're talking about risk, it's buyer beware, and you have to do it Denise, you'd have to do it awful lot. You'd have to come up with a policy, you'd have to come up with a procedure.
I
Cause now
did-
you're
that's
creating
what-
risk.
Yeah, I didn't mean to, that's why I asked if there was a change on the zoning and, you know, your site plan review form, if it required anything, but.
You know what, when someone comes before your planning commission on the site plan review, you can always encourage them to make sure that they do test the water. You can recommend that to them, just like I recommend people get a perk test before they buy a piece of property, because if it doesn't work, they're not gonna be putting in
Wow.
a septic. So, or tanks and stuff.
Like a holding tank if they do
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff's important,
That's why you
and that's
do that
what comes into buyer beware, and hopefully realtors, and there's so many components to the pie.
And then I have just one other short comment, hopefully short. During a site plan review, you know, there were some comments made by the commissioners that said, well, what about this and what about that? And one was, for example, there was something in the setback. How long do they have to, and we approved the SUP based upon them saying, yeah, that's just there temporarily. How long do they have to? I mean, do you ever check back on that and say,
If you tell me who and where,
yeah, but I'm just saying in general, you know, a lot of times when we say, you know, like,
The planning commission shouldn't be allowing anybody to put anything in the setback that's constructed. Now, if it's temporary and it's temporary storage, I mean, everybody sees it, it's gonna be there.
yeah,
And I'll address that, but anything like a variance should go with it.
well, they said it was temporary, but it's.
Yes,
Where's that?
I, yeah, I felt twice, and I'm not the senior member, I'm the junior member, but in the future, when they have, you know, a storage facility there, for construction or whatever, and they say it's temporary, I want to make that part of the agreement that it will be removed as a condition of our approval. We didn't say that. But I don't have past experience and I'm still learning some things. But maybe this is a good time for me to bring up one of my items. I mentioned, I think in our last meeting, the same thing. Our ZBA is supposed to have 5 members and 2 alternates, 2 required members, one from the planning commission and another from the board. We are supposed to have a board member on there, so we get the input from the elected officials. There hasn't been one on there that since I've been there. I was under the impression that, you know, it was voluntary, but it's required. And
It's in the
we have
bylaws
not
too.
had the 2 alternates either. I think mainly because nobody wants to go in front of that board to get approved. I mean, that's brutal. I mean, that's obnoxious the way some people have been treated, that just wanted to, you know, help out. I was forced onto the ZBA because no one else would do it. Since then, I have
I
taken.
don't think we forced you, Carl.
Heidi has the book here, the MTA book, that thick on planning and zoning. I read it before I ever attended a meeting. I also read the one that is for the planning commission. I have recently talked to one of our members. They have never read that book. And I don't know about the other 2, whether any of them have done any training. Plus, I have a certification now from Michigan State University. So I don't really give a damn what some of these people say. It's all in open session in the meeting. And anybody that has anything to say says it there. They don't send letters to us in between the meetings. We're not allowed to look at them. And that's the law. So if people want to object to us, do it at the meeting.
Okay, now I got a comment on that. Carl, I'm gonna read you something. I got a comment on this, ladies and gentlemen, who just made a statement that said was the law. A notice, a public hearing notice reads. I'm gonna read this to you, Carl?
Yes. Please.
just hand it to them.
No, I'm gonna read it. Because this is where all my homework started, because my teammate on my board wrote you a letter and pretty much says what you just said. So, notice of public hearing. When you read this, the Whitewater Township Zoning Board of Appeals will conduct a public hearing at a regularly scheduled meeting on August 24th, 2023, commencing at 7 o'clock in the evening. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear a request for a variance from the Whitewater Township Land Division Ordinance number 26, specifically section 7D, requiring the newly created parcels not exceed a 4:1 depth width ratio. This variance request affects parcel number 28131360001-02, also known as 6631 Banks Road, Williamsburg, Michigan 49690. The meeting will be conducted at the Whitewater Township offices, 5777 Benton Road, Williamsburg, Michigan. Written comments may be delivered or mailed to Whitewater Township. Attention, ZBA, P.O. Box 159, Williamsburg, Michigan 49690, and will be received up until the time of the meeting. You are the ZBA. You work for the people. And if I'm a person and I want you to read something, I have every right to hand this to you.
Yes.
But it says at the
Right
meeting,
there.
says at the meeting,
It
That's the
says you
meeting.
can mail or at
Yeah.
the meeting.
No.
you know, it says you gotta open it
That's
at
not
the
true.
meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
we are not allowed to discuss it with anybody or.
Okay, you don't
between the
discuss.
Meetings.
Okay.
Not discuss.
All right, I
Have to
gotta
read
say,
it.
this is an off-topic conversation. And maybe you guys want to take that up offline,
Hold on, I
but
want to ask you
not-
a question, Linda.
not in this forum.
In the pot incident, did you or did you not send your information somewhere other than the ZBA? Yes or no?
It was not a ZBA issue.
Correct, but did you send it somewhere other than the PC? Or wherever you sent it, did it go somewhere other than the township hall? Yes or no? Answer the question, because I know the answer.
I'm not really
It's a
100%
special
sure of the context, and I think you and I can also discuss this offline.
No, there's
if
no
it's
discussion needed. Read the public
This is-
hearing notice.
Not on our agenda,
Yeah.
and it is off topic. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
I
motion to adjourn. the
I-
meeting.
I'll second it,
Okay,
whoever.
motion made by Al and seconded by Mike. Roll call.
Yep, you do, because you're doing Zoom.
Okay. Denise,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Mike,
Yep.
Linda,
Yes.
Keith, yes. Heidi,
Yes.
Carl.
Yes.
Alfred.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned, 9:55.
Yes, well, I guess I recorded to the cloud too.